Chapter 1374. After killing a venerable head-on, Han Fei didn't feel anything special. In his heart, Han Fei felt as if he had defeated a peerless heavenly talent. There didn't seem to be any difference. Perhaps because his strength had already reached this level, when he faced a venerable again, he didn't have that kind of fascination as before. After all, the Exalt realm was just a realm of cultivation. In the past, it was a yearning. Although he hadn't become a venerable yet, Han Fei didn't panic at all. In the 3 years in the Waterwood Heaven, especially in the first year, Han Fei's strength had grown too fast. In the following time, Han Fei was just consolidating and polishing his foundation. Holding the sun-moon shell of the Venerable, Han Fei glanced at it casually and found that there were pitifully few things like spiritual fruits and spiritual springs in it. However, it made sense. They were venerables. They didn't care about things like spiritual springs and spiritual fruits for a long time. However, in the sun-moon shell of the Venerable, there were some top-level materials and a different sea map. Huh! Han Fei glanced at it calmly and didn't take it out. After all, Xuexinqi was still here. With this glance, Han Fei had already come to the conclusion that behind the 10,000 Demon Valley, there was a royal city. However, the location of this royal city was extremely mysterious. It must have broken through the wall of death. On this sea map, Han Fei saw a line barrier that looked like a city wall. On the map, there were even some maps about the inside of the barrier. However, Han Fei was a little puzzled. The Wall of Death was such a powerful barrier that even the battle between the two kings failed to break. How could the royal city of the Yinyang Heaven break through the Wall of Death? Not paying too much attention to this sea map, Han Fei faced Xuexinqi. Xuexinqi and the others should have explored the Scattered Stars Island countless times. If he knew the existence of the Wall of Death clearly, Xuexinqi and the others definitely knew it. Besides, there were suddenly so many strong masters on the 10,000 Demon Valley's side. Han Fei didn't believe that the royal city was behind them. Xuexinqi and the others should also be able to guess it. He just didn't know how much Xuexinqi knew about this so-called royal city. Seeing Han Fei again in this situation, Xuexinqi also sighed a little. The two looked at each other for a moment, and then Xuexinqi slowly said, "You were right. The 10,000 Demon Valley is indeed moving. If there were no accidents, they should have opened up a passage to King City. The Venerables and Tao-seeking realm great demons that you killed today should have come from the so-called Sea Demon Royal City. Do you know where it is?" Xuexinqi: "I don't know. If I had known earlier, I would have had a countermeasure." After a pause, Xuexinqi asked, "Did you come back alone?" Han Fei thought for a moment. Although Jing Er came back with him, his junior sister had told him not to let Jing Er fight easily. Therefore, it was better not to tell Xuexinqi. So, Han Fei nodded. "Okay. At least I've become much stronger, haven't I?" However, Xuexinqi shook his head slightly. "I'm afraid it's not enough." Han Fei couldn't help but frown. Not enough? Han Fei thought to himself, is Xuexinqi crazy? I've just killed more than a dozen Tao-seeking realm demons, including a semi-venerable and a beginner venerable half-mermaid. Isn't that enough? Han Fei immediately looked in the direction of the Scattered Stars Island. "What's the problem?" Xuexinqi nodded. "You should know the power of the Scattered Stars Island itself. Your father is not here, so there is no venerable on the Scattered Stars Island. In order to resist the suppression of the Thousand Star City, I had to make a breakthrough. But even if I make a breakthrough, I'm just a beginner venerable and can suppress venerables of the same realm. That said, if a middle venerable one or stronger powerhouse comes, my right to speak will be cut." Han Fei couldn't help but narrow his eyes. "Someone is coming to seize power?" Xuexinqi nodded. "Yes. However, the result is not so bad. Some people from the big clans have come, and so have the 7 major sections. Only with these 2 restrictions can I continue to control the Scattered Stars Island." Han Fei thought to himself, The complicated situation in the Thousand-Star City has finally spread to the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei frowned. Many have come? Shueishenqi said. 4 mid-level venerables and 4 beginner venerables have come. Including me, there are currently 9 venerables. Although you are an advanced explorer, your combat power. I didn't expect that there would be so many venerables on the Scattered Stars Island one day. Han Fei curled his lips. You could have destroyed the 10,000 Demon Valley before, right? However, without the 10,000 Demon Valley, where could you find so many sea demons to train the human disciples? A smile appeared on Shueishenqi's face. You seem to have grown a lot. Indeed, it's not difficult to destroy the 10,000 Demon Valley, and our human race is not that weak. But now, it doesn't matter whether the 10,000 Demon Valley exists or not. In the end, it's the Empyrean waterfall that can't hold on any longer. You came back a little early, but in at least 3 months, at most half a year, the so-called Sea Demon King City will definitely appear. At that time, a war is inevitable. Han Fei said. No matter what, the 10,000 Demon Valley must be destroyed. There are too many sea demons in the 10,000 Demon Valley. Their number is even far greater than the so-called King City. Destroying them can at least ensure the safety of the ordinary people on the Scattered Stars Island. Shueishenqi asked, Have you seen the King City over there? Han Fei thought to himself, I've more than seen it. I've been there, become a heavenly talent, and entered their forbidden land-level secret realm. Of course, Han Fei naturally wouldn't say these words to Shueishenqi, so he said, I roughly know. The King City is not as big as I imagined. There are 2 major king cities over there, one of which has about 100,000 people. Only 100,000 people? Shueishenqi couldn't help frowning. This doesn't seem right? What can a mere 100,000 people do? However, Han Fei then said, Don't underestimate these 100,000 people. The minimum standard to enter the King City is a level 6 demonic heritage, which is equivalent to a level 6 spiritual heritage of our human race. Wow! Even Shueishenqi was shocked to hear this. What kind of standard is this? A level 5 spiritual heritage is qualified to enter the 7 major academies. If what Han Fei said was true, wouldn't the strength of this Sea Demon King City be heaven-defying? Back then, Tanggu only had a level 7 spiritual heritage and was regarded as a treasure by the Thousand-Star City. And this Sea Demon King City required a level 6 demonic heritage to enter? What kind of concept was this? And there were 100,000 people. Of course, Han Fei was talking about the White Shell King City. As for the other Sea Demon King cities, they were probably not the same. However, it could also be seen from this that the heritage of the Sea Demon King City was absolutely not to be underestimated. Han Fei continued, The lowest level that can be in the King City is the Sea Spirit State. This means that there are 100,000 sea spirits in the King City. Shueishenqi's face suddenly changed and he stared at Han Fei. What did you say? Han Fei said, You didn't hear wrong. In the King City, the lowest strength is the Sea Spirit State. Those below this realm are not even qualified to enter. There may be something wrong with our King City. Otherwise, the Scattered Stars Island would have been flattened long ago. So, since they are still fighting tentatively, it means that the other party's difficulties have not been resolved yet. Shueishenqi suddenly raised his head, looked in the direction of the Scattered Stars Island, and interrupted. This matter is of great importance. Let's talk about it later. The Scattered Stars Island has been fighting for 7 days in a row, and everyone is already tired. Since this battle is over and you have broken the rules, go back quickly. Scattered Stars Island. They didn't know that on the battlefield ahead, Han Fei had returned and started a massacre. After all, the battle ahead was not something ordinary people could get involved in at all. On the west side, on the coastline from the Skeleton Shore to the Path of Giants, the battle was the fiercest. In the tide, densely packed giant feathered horseshoe crabs and giant insect kings rushed forward as if they were free. It was fine on the path of giants, where there was a complete set of smooth defense lines. Even if the red tide rushed forward, within the range of the path of giants, there were countless people resisting it. These ordinary sea creatures were not allowed to take a step forward. However, on the skeleton shore, places below the beach were not so easy. On the skeleton shore, the battlefield here had expanded to more than 5,000 people. On the coastline, more than 3,000 people were resting. The spirit gatherers were undoubtedly the most difficult of this group of people. Their spiritual energy had almost been exhausted. Above the coast, a fiery red figure, holding 2 swords, was killing on the battlefield. From a distance, it looked like a beautiful red line, killing from south to north, from east to west. "Captain, don't we have other reinforcements? We've been fighting for 3 days and 3 nights, and the last batch only rested for half an hour. This is not enough at all." "Captain Yu, I'm Ling Yu from the command center. You can't consume any more spiritual energy. 6 hours ago, the enemy law enforcers retreated, and it's very likely that they will come back." Swish, swish. The fiery red figure threw out 2 swords and killed more than 30 enemies. Then she stepped into the void, panting. "Others can rest, but I can't. My momentum is unbreakable. Spirit gatherers, replenish my spiritual energy." 2 hidden fisher-level spirit gatherers quickly crossed the battlefield and went straight ahead. Yu Lingyun sighed slightly. Scattered Stars Island, year after year, day after day. Are they training talents, or are they really fighting against sea demons? Where are the experts? Where are they? Yu Lingyun stretched out her hand, and the 2 red longswords flew back. She held the longsword in her hand, her long hair fluttering in the wind, and looked into the distance. "Daliang Linghui, you should learn from Xiao Xiao." "Fine, I'm afraid I have to follow your example. Let's wait a little longer. Let me defend this skeleton shore." "Ah!" Puff, puff. Suddenly, the 6th life spear flew out of the ground. The 2 spirit gatherers who were replenishing spiritual energy for Yu Lingyun were pierced in an instant. "Asshole!" Yu Lingyun's face changed, and she slashed at the ground with her sword. "Hey! You're finally tired." At the moment when Yu Lingyun attacked the ground, a king insect not far away suddenly exploded. A harpoon pierced the sky, and white light blossomed. The Sea King's strike was launched. Yu Lingyun wanted to wave her sword again, but half of the sword wave had just been condensed, and her spiritual energy was exhausted. The recoil made her vomit a mouthful of blood. Looking at the white harpoon, Yu Lingyun's eyes dimmed slightly. Sure enough, she couldn't avoid her death. "Xiao Xiao, you're the only one left. Live well. Poochie." Yu Lingyun couldn't be more familiar with the sound of a sharp blade tearing flesh. She couldn't help but close her eyes, but 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 3 seconds had passed, but she didn't feel any pain at all? Yu Lingyun couldn't help but slowly open her eyes, only to see a rather familiar figure standing on the sea and looking at her with a smile. What's wrong? Will the Yu Lingyun I know also give up on herself? Yu Lingyun looked at the half-mermaid that was torn in half, and her eyes couldn't help but warm up. Captain? Captain? I'm finally back. I won't leave until the yin-yang sky comes to an end. End of this chapter. Chapter 1375. Yu Lingyun couldn't believe her eyes. She had long heard that Han Fei had gone to the Thousand-Star City. However, it didn't take long for gossip to spread that the Thug Academy had rebelled and attacked the Thousand-Star City. Yu Lingyun and the others sighed for a while, and secretly prayed that Han Fei would be fine. At that time, Leng Hui said that he would inquire about it. However, not long after, Leng Hui was killed in the outer sea, and his body couldn't even be brought back. At this moment, Han Fei appeared quietly at this moment, like a god descending from heaven. Seeing Yu Lingyun's surprised expression, Han Fei smiled faintly. What's wrong? I haven't seen you for a few years. Don't you know me? Be careful. Yu Lingyun was about to speak, but her face changed, and she quickly shouted. Swish! 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 Life spears broke through the air, and 5 red demons attacked Han Fei. They couldn't confirm Han Fei's strength, but Han Fei could kill a sea spirit, so they had to go all out. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. Without even looking back, he casually waved his hand, and there was a series of explosions. The 5 life spears, together with the 5 red demons hiding underground, were instantly blown up. This scene was witnessed by almost half of the skeleton shore. Han Fei said indifferently, "How troublesome." Han Fei looked back, and within a kilometer around him, the seawater flowed backward and floated in the sky. In the blink of an eye, it turned into water blades as thin as cicada wings. Swish! 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 Thousands of knives spiraled like dragons, and a huge number of water blades wandered on the surface of the sea, even plunging into the beach and the seabed. Puff! 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 Bam! 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 How could these ordinary giant feathered horseshoe crabs and king beetles resist the infinity water? It was basically a one-sided fight. With Han Fei's current soul power, it might be a bit difficult for him to control thousands of knives. After all, it was quite brain-consuming to walk thousands of paths with the knives. However, the infinity water had almost become a part of his body. Therefore, there was no such problem at this moment. Wherever each knife blade passed, knife energy would remain. Thousands of knives flowed like a stream, sweeping away the clouds, and corpses were everywhere. Shoot! Who is this? Like a swarm of locusts, the sabers cleared the giant feathered horseshoe crabs and king beetles within dozens of kilometers in the blink of an eye. After 10 breaths, there was not a single marine creature left on the skeleton shore. Under the shocked gazes of tens of thousands of people and Yu Lingyun, Han Fei stepped in midair with Snowmorn in his hand, covering 1,000 meters with each step and leaving a sword mark after every step. 10 steps and 10 swords. Finally, Han Fei stomped his foot and a large spirit-gathering array appeared. Behind him, the seawater flowed backward and rolled into the sky. The huge waves rose more than 200 meters into the sky. Azure Sea as sword. Against an expert of the same level, it was basically impossible to kill a great demon at the peak of the Tao-seeking realm with this kind of power. However, this was the skeleton shore, which was close to the Scattered Stars Island. The sea creatures that could reach here couldn't be too strong. Han Fei slashed with Snowmorn non-stop, and the spirit-gathering array under his feet rose crazily. The terrifying tide of swords spread for dozens of kilometers. Crash! The huge tide was pushing against the sea in the opposite direction. After only an instant, everybody on the skeleton shore discovered, to their shock, that the seawater had been completely enshrouded by insect corpses and crab shells. That terrifying sword wave pushed to a place where no one could see it with the naked eye. Only then did it collapse with a loud bang due to the lack of spiritual energy. During this period of time, practically everything that the wave passed through perished. With this strike alone, Han Fei had killed countless creatures. Han Fei could even crazily absorb the spiritual energy contained in those creatures through the demon purification pot. However, for him now, he could absorb spiritual energy from the void at any time, so he didn't covet the spiritual energy. After all, spiritual energy was spiritual energy everywhere, and he didn't have to get it from the sea creatures. Besides, the people of the Scattered Stars Island had been fighting for 7 days and nights and needed a lot of spiritual energy. Han Fei didn't want to rob them. After all, those people couldn't absorb spiritual energy from the void and could only rely on eating the sea creatures. After Han Fei took a few steps, he returned to the skeleton shore. The people on the shore, including the guards and scouts who had just been replaced, all stood up. The crowd stared with their eyes wide open, their hearts filled with astonishment. Tens of thousands of people fought on such a difficult battlefield. That young man, 1 man and 1 sword, had wiped out all of them? Was he still a human? Gulp. Someone exclaimed, "Oh my God! Is this General Schweshenchi?" Someone said in shock, "I don't know who he is. But he's my life goal. He's my life goal." Some people on the battlefield even sat down, blinked their eyes and murmured, "Strong, is this the strong? It's him, it's Han Fei, it's Captain Han Fei. He used to be the captain of my scouts team." "What? Old Hu, take it easy. Don't talk nonsense," a newcomer exclaimed and quickly stopped the guy who shouted. Someone was dumbfounded. "Old Hu, are you kidding me? Are you talking about Captain Han Fei who created the Feiyanmu furnace?" Someone hurriedly said, "Is it the Han Fei who attacked the Dark Hunter Legion twice?" The middle-aged man called Old Hu said, "It can't be wrong. At that time, I just came to the 38th Battalion. At that time, Captain Han Fei was already a captain. Now, I don't understand his strength anymore." Han Fei came to Yu Lingyun, pointed at her, and a stream of spiritual energy quickly poured into her body. Then, Han Fei waved his hand again, and a chain of white light suddenly descended and frantically began to circulate among the injured people. Everyone who was transmitted by the white light, no matter how big or small, recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was also the first time that Han Fei had used the holy light chain. He had never had a chance to use it before. But now it really came in handy. Who knew that the effect would be so good? The holy light chain could transmit nearly 100 people at once. Of course, it also consumed a lot of energy. However, Han Fei could afford it now. Han Fei roared, "All the seriously injured, gather here in 10 seconds. Under the gaze of Yu Lingyun, the commanders of the hidden fishers, and the members of the Tactical Command Center, the crowd quickly gathered. Swish, swish, swish. Holy light chains fell one after another. As if the beach had been cracked in half, in an instant, the injuries of thousands of people were recovering in an orderly manner. For those who had the most serious injuries, such as broken hands and feet, there was nothing Han Fei could do. It was said that such injuries could be treated when one reached the venerable realm. In the discussion, Han Fei frowned slightly and looked at Yu Lingyun. "Why are you still here?" Yu Lingyun took a breath and looked at the powerful healing techniques one after another, thinking, "This is Han Fei, a top heavenly talent and a legend of the Scattered Stars Island. Isn't it only natural that he can become so strong?" Yu Lingyun sighed slightly. "Leng Hui, Gu Daliang, and I all have the same purpose, which is to become stronger. Why do you want us to go back to the town?" Han Fei glanced at her. "Where are Leng Hui and Gu Daliang?" Yu Lingyun smiled bitterly. "Leng Hui died in the outer sea, and Gu Daliang died in a sea demon riot a year ago. I thought it was my turn today. I didn't expect that you would come." Han Fei had mixed feelings. However, Han Fei just nodded and took out a sea-swallowing seashell, handing it over. "You've grown fast, and you've been fighting all the time. However, fighting all the time is not a way out. Cultivation requires thinking, enlightenment, and understanding. Take a few years off." Yu Lingyun accepted the sea-swallowing seashell in a daze, only to find that there were abundant spiritual springs, spiritual fruits, energy fruits, battle techniques, and techniques in it. She even saw 2 longswords that were emitting fire. "Captain." Yu Lingyun quickly came back to herself, but when she raised her head, she saw that Han Fei had already walked 1,000 meters away. Han Fei's voice fell next to her ears. "I don't want all the people I lead to die. Okay, that's enough for you. Go back to your town and study for a few years. Next, it's my battle." Ever since Han Fei left, every time they met, it was only a short moment. Yu Lingyun remembered that when Han Fei returned from the sea, the first thing he did was to appear on the skeleton shore and have a hot pot with them. Yu Lingyun knew that it was probably from that moment on that Han Fei was completely different and showed his extraordinary talent. Swish, swish, swish. Immediately, dozens of people flew to Yu Lingyun and asked telepathically, "Captain, is this Captain Han? Sister Lingyun, how strong is he exactly? Didn't they say that Han Fei only rose in a dozen years? He shouldn't be more than 30 years old at this moment. How did he become so strong? Someone asked. Sister Lingyun, Captain Han is your old captain. What good things did he give you? Yu Lingyun looked at Han Fei's back and then at the sea far away that was full of broken bodies. She immediately shouted, Everyone, clean up the battlefield in half an hour. Quickly reorganize the army and be ready to support the other defense lines. Han Fei, who had disappeared from everyone's sight, slightly smiled. Yu Lingyun is still the same Yu Lingyun. No matter what happens, she always puts the immediate matters first. Suddenly, a voice sounded in Han Fei's ears. I was wondering who it was. He cleaned up the battlefield in a few seconds by himself with a sword. It turns out to be the traitor of the Thug Academy. Han Fei scanned with his perception. He didn't know him. The man was in the city lord's mansion at this moment. Han Fei frowned slightly. Can you repeat what you just said? Anyway, I just slaughtered one. I don't mind slaughtering another one. In the city lord's mansion, the man's face turned cold. Han Fei, you fled back then. Why are you back now? Han Fei curled his lips. Which family are you from? If you don't know how to talk, shut up. I'll say it again. If you say it again, I'll beat you into an iron-head fish. Chapter 1376. Han Fei was as strong as ever. When he first entered the Thousand-Star City, Han Fei forcibly took back the Thug Academy and slapped the major families in the face. This was not the Thousand-Star City, but that person dared to mock him. How could Han Fei not be angry? If it weren't for the fact that they were facing a formidable enemy, Han Fei would have slaughtered him the moment he spoke, or before he even opened his mouth. After all, the Thug Academy hated these big families. Therefore, Han Fei was still restraining himself for the sake of the sea demons. Since the battle had just ended and countless ordinary cultivators were still recovering, he didn't want to implicate them. Otherwise, how could Han Fei allow this person to speak so arrogantly? Back then, Han Fei said that he was looking for opportunities and left the Thousand-Star City. In reality, it was indeed because his foundation was not strong enough that he managed to escape. Now, Han Fei believed that he had made some progress in his strength. Although he was not strong enough to fight those middle-level and peak-level venerables head-on, few people on the Scattered Stars Island could threaten him. If those people from the Thousand-Star City disobeyed the rules and wanted to attack him, Han Fei wouldn't ignore them. This time, this person was so rude to Han Fei. Han Fei naturally wouldn't back down. He tore open the void and soon arrived at the City Lord Mansion. When Han Fei walked out of the void, many people scanned him with their senses, and a venerable snorted. City Lord Residence. At this moment, there were 6 supremacies overseeing this place. Shueishenqi had just returned. As for the person who spoke with the intention of mocking, he was tall and sturdy, and it looked like his muscles were knotted. In the Thousand-Star City, only the members of the Yang family had this style, so their identities were confirmed. In addition to this venerable, there were 2 other venerables wearing unique clothes. They were undoubtedly from the Jade Fairy Palace and the Grand Void Academy. Han Fei didn't know the other 2. However, one of them gave Han Fei a sense of danger. He shouldn't be a beginner venerable. The old turtle thought, there are only 2 middle-grade venerable ones here. One of them wants to kill you, but there's nothing to fear about the others. The moment Han Fei entered the City Lord's mansion, his eyes were already fixed on the young man who was full of killing intent towards him. It could be said that the people here were basically all youth. There wasn't even a middle-aged person. Perhaps because he was an Exalt Realm expert, he was able to change his appearance at will, and he revealed his appearance when he was young. Han Fei sneered. You want to kill me so much? Are you from the Truman Show? Of course, the young man wouldn't answer. His gaze was cold as he said, I didn't expect that you would be able to escape for 6 to 7 years. You've grown quite fast. You've actually passed your tribulation. Han Fei chuckled. What's wrong? Are you scared of my tribulation? The Yang family's venerable sneered. Kid, I don't know how you survived the tribulation, but I'm not afraid of you. However, passing the tribulation and entering the venerable realm are two different concepts. Aren't you a little too arrogant now? Whoosh! Han Fei drew his knife and pointed it at the venerable of the Yang family. It's none of your business whether I'm arrogant or not. If you don't like it, let's fight to determine who's superior and who's inferior. Let me see what kind of strength that old monster from the Yang family has cultivated for 1,000 years. Bang! The Yang family's venerable pressed down with one hand, and a green jade table was directly crushed into pieces. However, Han Fei just smiled. Why? You don't dare to hit me, so you vent your anger on a table? He had lived for thousands of years, but this was all he had? The Yang family is really weak. How dare you? A big axe appeared in the Yang family's venerable's hand. He glared at Han Fei and almost slashed him. However, a thin man next to him glanced at him and snorted. If it weren't for the fact that this is the critical moment of the battle between human beings and sea demons, and the death of a venerable would cause a great change, I would have slashed you with my axe. Han Fei said disdainfully, I've been cultivating for a long time. Do you think I'm scared? You're just a junior venerable. How dare you talk nonsense? Do you think you can kill me? Who do you think you are? The Yang family's venerable was about to fly into a rage, but he heard the thin man say, Young man, don't be too rude. You're indeed quite talented, and you're quite capable of killing a venerable one. However, we all know very well that the venerable has been fighting with General Shui for several days, and his strength is no longer at its peak. Even if you kill him, I'm afraid it doesn't mean anything. The Chu Men venerable said lightly, Han Fei, it's said that you have the demeanor of a king and even have an inheritance. How about you guard the Scattered Stars Island? I think with your means, I'm afraid you have the ability to deal with them, right? Before Han Fei spoke, Shueishenqi said to him via voice transmission, Don't be provoked. The beautiful woman of the Jade Fairy Palace also said via voice transmission, The situation on this island is complicated, and the situation on the sea demon's side is also unpredictable. At this moment, we can't lack a strong master. The Chu Men venerable smiled and seemed to want to see how Han Fei would respond. If Han Fei agreed, he might really leave. Let's see how Han Fei will deal with this mess then. However, Han Fei looked at the Chu Men venerable with a smile. You want to leave? That's not impossible. The Chu Men sect has always been as timid as shrimp and don't dare to go out of the 1,000-star city. However, if you leave now, you don't have to come here anymore. All the supplies of the Scattered Stars Island to the Chu Men sect will be cut off. If the Chu Men sect finds that the Scattered Stars Island is still profitable and wants to get their hands on it, I'm sorry, but I'll kill anyone who dares to come. The Chu Men venerable's face turned cold. Young man, how dare you? The Yang family venerable said, What? Shueishenqi, since when has the Scattered Stars Island been ruled by a kid? Rip. The void was instantly torn apart. The Yang family venerable didn't expect that Han Fei would attack in this situation. He was accidentally slapped into the void by Han Fei. At that moment, many other venerables stepped into the void one after another. Holding Snowmorn, Han Fei slashed it down, and the frost and snow fell. In the void, a frost mark was left, and the extremely cold power and domineering sharpness slashed at the Yang family venerable. Clang! The Yang family venerable blocked it with his axe, but he miscalculated Han Fei's strength and was sent flying 1,000 meters away. The flesh and blood on his hand exploded, and essence blood spurted out. Han Fei covered 1,000 meters in one step, and Snowmorn had been replaced by the embroidery needle. Immediately, the Monkey King smashed down crazily, and spiritual energy surged in the void like real waves, one after another. Clang! 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 War God's Devil Axe! Han Fei sneered. there's a forbidden spell here. The Yang family venerable suddenly stopped breathing as if he were scared, and his face changed dramatically. On the other side, the faces of Shueishenqi and the others changed drastically. The Chu men venerable gritted his teeth. It's a space sealing technique. The beautiful woman of the Jade Fairy Palace couldn't help but sigh. This technique is extraordinary. In the entire Thousand-Star City, there are less than 5 people who can match it. The Venerable of the Grand Void Academy also nodded slightly. Yes, it's not just the Tao, but the time he spent comprehending the Tao. It's too fast. How many years has it been? As an advanced explorer, he can shake a beginner venerable. I've never heard of such a thing. At this moment, Han Fei punched out like a dragon, bombarding crazily with only his physical strength. Boom, boom, boom. The biggest feature of body tempering was that their heads were hard and their bodies were hard. The Yang clan's venerable was knocked to the ground. Han Fei's attack was really a combination of left uppercuts, right uppercuts, and a series of punches. There were no tricks at all. This was a pure outbreak of power. In a moment, the Yang family venerable was hammered into a bloody mess. His whole head was swollen, and many of his bones were broken. Han Fei suddenly felt that time was almost up. If he continued, the restraint of his Tao would disappear. At that time, wouldn't he be exposed? Bam! Han Fei kicked the venerable of the Yang family to the venerable of the Chu sect, and then glanced at him coldly. I said I would beat you into an iron-head fish, so I will. I always keep my word. Remember to talk nicely next time. Who do you think you are? How dare you speak so coldly in front of me? If you do it again, even if the sea demons know, I will kill you on the spot. The 2 venerables of the Jade Fairy Palace and the Grand Void Academy looked at each other and were speechless. What kind of monster is this? This was the first time he had seen someone use pure strength to beat a venerable half to the point where his body was almost crippled. The body of the Yang family venerable was recovering with cracking sounds. However, there was a trace of horror in his eyes. He thought to himself, Han Fei is using his fists now. What if he uses weapons? Without the restraint of laws, a venerable could recover very quickly. No matter how hard Han Fei hit him, he would only break his opponent's bones. He would only need to consume a lot of energy to recover. Looking at the crazy look of the Yang family venerable, Han Fei said indifferently, As I said, you can go now. Then from today on, you have nothing to do with the Scattered Stars Island. The Scattered Stars Island will stop the supply of resources. But similarly, if you dare to set foot on the Scattered Stars Island again, I will kill you without mercy. Han Fei couldn't help but look at Shueishenqi, thinking, since you want to support me, you should have expected this day when I went to the Shuemu heaven, when you made the deal with my father, and when you bet that I would become a king. Seeing Han Fei's strength, Shueishenqi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He nodded slightly and said, Everyone, the moment Han Fei left the Scattered Stars Island, he was already a 9-star inspector. At that time, he was also one of the strongest existences on the Scattered Stars Island. Now, Han Fei has returned and killed a venerable as a general. In the battle, he killed more than a dozen Tao-seeking warriors and more than 1,000 sea spirits and sea demons. This achievement has already reached the commander level. The commander level was a 12-star rank. So far, there was only Shueishenqi on the Scattered Stars Island. But now, Shueishenqi had already chosen a side. Han Fei's strength was already comparable to that of a venerable. Shueishenqi naturally chose a side. As for those big families, they were also divided into different sects on the Scattered Stars Island. Even if he offended a few families, it wouldn't be a big deal. The Chu sect venerable snorted coldly. Good, good, good. Shueishenqi, have you completely abandoned the 1,000-star city? Shueishenqi looked serious. Why do you say that, Venerable Chu? The Scattered Stars Island has always been fair in rewards and punishments. Han Fei's achievement in building the Fian Furnace is enough to make him a refiner and a general. This time, he killed a lot of enemies in one battle. Even if he has a 13-star rank, it's not impossible for him to be a guardian god. After all, I haven't hunted a venerable realm powerhouse so far. The Chu sect venerable narrowed his eyes. In that case, it's up to General Shui. The big families are here to help. There are many lines of defense on the Scattered Stars Island, and we are not weak. We can defend one side. Goodbye. Chapter 1377. In fact, if it were anywhere else, Han Fei would have directly killed the venerable of the Yang family. However, it couldn't be done on the Scattered Stars Island. Not to mention that if he really wanted to kill, the others would definitely not sit idly by. If a venerable died on the Scattered Stars Island and the weather changed, the sea demons would take action too. Therefore, Han Fei had a rough idea. The grand plan of the human race was of course more important than his own personal honor. At this moment, as soon as the venerable of the Chu sect left, the venerables of the Yang family and the Yi family naturally followed suit. Only the two venerables of the Grand Void Academy and the Jade Fairy Palace stayed. After all, the 7 academies were still somewhat related to the Thug Academy. They weren't enemies. Shueishenqi didn't mind, and he said indifferently, "All right, since it has come to this, let's go to the estate and talk." In the city lord's mansion. As soon as the 4 of them took their seats, Shueishenqi said, "Of the 3 just now, one is Chu Men and Chu Qing, an intermediate-level supremacy. Yang Kuan of the Yang family, an elementary venerable realm expert. Yi Kai of the Yi clan, a mid-level exalt realm expert. Now, there are 3 intermediate venerables on the Scattered Stars Island, including me. The other one is from the Heavenly Sword sect." While talking, Shueishenqi glanced at Han Fei casually, implying, "Don't worry. The big families are not completely invincible." The Sky Sword sect had always been domineering. They would not allow the aristocratic families to send a few experts to suppress the others. Han Fei nodded slightly and looked at the 2 from the Jade Fairy Palace and the Grand Void Academy. Shueishenqi said, "Elder Bingyun of the Jade Fairy Palace just entered the Venerable Realm, and her strength is comparable to mine. Ancestral Master 6 Sword of the Grand Void Academy is at the peak of the Elementary Venerable Realm, and he may break through to the Intermediate Venerable Realm at any time." Han Fei cupped his hands. "Nice to meet you, seniors." The 2 of them returned the gesture. In fact, they also knew that Han Fei called them seniors because he was too young. In terms of age, it was not inappropriate to address them as seniors. However, Han Fei's growth was so rapid that they didn't dare to take it lightly. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Are there others?" Shueishenqi. Sun Baixing of the Sun family, Chao Shuang of the Chao family, Jian Sanqing of the Heavenly Sword sect. Most of the people here were people who had lived in seclusion for a long time. "I'm afraid the only one you know is Sun Baixing." Han Fei was slightly surprised. Sun Baixing has become a venerable? Shueishenqi. 2 years ago, I just became a venerable. Han Fei didn't really care. He had just become a venerable. With his current strength, he should be able to kill him with a sneak attack. Even if it was a head-on battle, Sun Baixing wouldn't be able to withstand it easily. However, there were too many venerables on the Scattered Stars Island. The great battle had yet to begin, but many supremacies had arrived. If a venerable came from the Scattered Stars Island, the sea demons would naturally send experts over too. So, if his guess was right, those people were probably here for the Empyrean waterfall. Elder Bingyun of the Jade Fairy Palace said, "This time, the 2 of us won't disturb you. You are all new powerhouses. We don't know the situation very well. Since one of you has controlled the Scattered Stars Island for many years, and the other has the potential to become a king, let's talk more." In the Grand Void Academy, Grand Elder 6 Sword also nodded slightly. "Goodbye." After the 2 left, Shueishenqi waved his hand, and the city lord's mansion was closed. Seeing this, Han Fei quickly asked, "Where are the other venerables?" Shueishenqi. Jian Sanqing of the Heavenly Sword sect is confronting a sea demon venerable on the ancient battlefield. Sun Baixing is guarding the periphery of the twisted jungle. Maybe he knows you have returned and doesn't want to meet you. Chao Shuang of the Chao family never asks about other things. When there is a great battle, he will naturally appear. Han Fei frowned. Has the current situation reached the point where the big families and the 7 major sects of the 1,000-star city are going to send people down? Shueishenqi looked at Han Fei's eyes and said, "What do you think?" Han Fei's heart sank. The Empyrean waterfall? Shueishenqi nodded. Not only the big families but also the 7 major sections. They have the same intention. It's just that they are a little better than the big families. Han Fei said, "What's the situation with the sea demons now? There are a lot of venerables and sea spirits here. A few years ago, more than 5,000 sea demons died on the ancient battlefield. It's only been a few years and they've recovered?" Shueishenqi. About 2 years ago, a very widespread earthquake broke out near the 10,000 Demon Valley. The waves set off even impacted the area within 50,000 kilometers of the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. The range of the earthquake exceeded 500,000 kilometers? Shueishenqi shook his head slightly. "I'm not very clear. When the waves reached the Scattered Stars Island, they were not very strong. However, after that, 4 explorers died on the Scattered Stars Island. They all went to explore in various directions, and none of them came back." Han Fei frowned. After all, the perception range of an explorer is limited. Since venerables came out of the 10,000 Demon Valley, it's normal that they died there. Shueishenqi nodded. "Yes. Since that time, I knew what happened to the 10,000 Demon Valley. Because I had a strong hunch, I found a strong master of the Heavenly Sword sect to protect me and entered the venerable realm. Later, I guessed that the 10,000 Demon Valley and the Sea Demon King City had made direct contact." Han Fei didn't care about the King City, but was quite curious about Shueishenqi's strength. He asked in surprise, "You can become a venerable at any time?" Shueishenqi said, "The longer you accumulate the Great Path, the smoother the path of Great Path will be." After a pause, Shueishenqi said, "Later, 3 venerables raided the sea demons, and the 1,000-star city also intervened at that time. At that time, your father and the Thug Academy had already hidden. So, I had to accept the people from the 1,000-star city whether I wanted to or not. The good thing is that there are many venerables, but the bad thing is that these people are not sincere, and their target is the Empyrean waterfall." Han Fei took a breath. "Can't you find the location of the King City?" Shueishenqi said with a straight face, "It must have appeared, but it can't be found. Now the Scattered Stars Island doesn't have the manpower to find it. Besides, even if it is found, so what? If a beginner venerable finds it, what do you think the result will be?" Han Fei certainly knew. The Scattered Stars Island couldn't be left unguarded. And the King City was an important place. If it was really found, there would definitely be many strong masters there. Besides, the King City was called the King City because of the existence of the giant deep-sea demons. Although the Yin-Yang Heaven might not have a king under the watch of the Eye of the Heavenly Law, it was still possible to have a half-king. Han Fei couldn't help but think of old Monster Chu Sek. That guy must have reached the half-king realm. The sky-dissecting finger, the Heavenly Sword Master, and old Han were all blocked by him, which showed his strength. If the Scattered Stars Island also had a half-king, they would have been destroyed in the blink of an eye. Why didn't he show up now? It didn't mean he wouldn't show up in the future. Han Fei couldn't help but remember that the venerable he killed had a sea map in his sun-moon shell. Others might not be able to come back alive if they found the King City, but he was different. He had the ability to come back. Even without the Gemini Divine technique, he now had a bodyguard, didn't he? These thoughts flashed in Han Fei's mind, and he immediately said, "Should I go look for it?" Shueishenqi shook his head slightly. "Even if you find it, what can you do? Besides, do you think there are any unknown places in this sea area? If there are, I'm afraid I have to tell you one thing. This sea area has a range. We are trapped in this world. It's like a giant seal has locked us here. Its range, roughly estimated to be about 8 million kilometers. In the past, many explorers had tried to get out of the seal. However, no one ever came out after they went in. Han Fei suddenly thought of something. Wait, you mean we can enter the Wall of Death on our side? The Wall of Death. Shueishenqi's eyes narrowed. You mean the name of this seal is the Wall of Death? Han Fei didn't hide it. The Wall of Death, also known as the Chaotic Ocean. There is indeed a barrier there, like a ring-shaped belt, which hides ancient creatures and some fierce beasts that may have never appeared in this world. Not only on our side, but also on the other side, but in the waterwood heaven we can't even get in. Shueishenqi frowned. What's the other side like? Han Fei wanted to explain a little. In fact, there was nothing special about the waterwood heaven. Just like the people of the waterwood heaven had long known that there was a yin-yang heaven next door. However, when Han Fei was about to say that, suddenly, the entire city master's mansion was enveloped by a powerful pressure. Shueishenqi felt his body suddenly tightened, and he couldn't even stand up. A Grand Master? In Shueishenqi's words, the so-called Grand Masters were high-level venerables or even peak-level venerables. Han Fei tilted his head and looked at the void, saying telepathically, Jing there's no need to make such a big noise, right? No one knew where Peaceful was hiding, but her voice rippled here. Her Majesty said that we can't say anything before the two sides are connected. Han Fei shrugged. Okay. How about you withdraw the pressure first? Swish. Shueishenqi's back was already covered in a cold sweat. Suddenly, he felt relieved, and the pressure on his body lightened. After all, he was the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island and the god of war. He didn't get up immediately, nor did he look for Jing. Instead, he raised his eyelids and stared at Han Fei's eyes tightly. Someone is coming over there? Han Fei nodded. Shueishenqi was also a smart man. He had already guessed it. Why would he hide it? So Han Fei said, Don't worry, there's only one person on my side. Under normal circumstances, she won't take action. Shueishenqi pondered for a long time. The existence of a supreme master in the yin-yang heaven was enough to change a lot of situations. Sure enough, Han Fei didn't go there for nothing. Now that he came back, there was such a strong master hiding behind him. Shueishenqi asked, How strong is she? After all, Han Fei was the supreme commander. Shueishenqi's first thought was not fear, but how to make use of this person. Han Fei said, Half a king level, but don't think too much. She won't take action unless it's necessary. Shueishenqi clenched his hands tighter in his sleeves. Obviously, he was shocked by Han Fei's strength. However, he quickly analyzed the pros and cons. Behind Han Fei, there was already a thug academy, Han Guanshu and Ren Tianfei. At this moment, there was another half a king level. In this way, who could stop Han Fei from becoming a king? Secretly relieved, Shueishenqi said calmly, Okay, no one else will know about this. With that, Shueishenqi raised his head, looked at the void and said lightly, I hope you don't release your pressure at will. The situation here is complicated. The sudden appearance of a half-king level powerhouse will change the situation, which may not be a good thing for Han Fei. With that, Shueishenqi looked at Han Fei again. From today on, you will take over my position. Chapter 1378. What? Han Fei, who was calm at first, was shocked when he heard that he was going to take over Shueishenqi's position. He was taken aback by the news. I have no management experience at all. Are you kidding me? Han Fei hurriedly said, No, wait a minute. Do I look like a leader to you? Shueishenqi said indifferently, Don't forget your identity. It's you who wants to seize the throne, not me. Do you think you can steal the throne by hiding behind my back? Han Fei shrugged. Then I can do it after I take over your position? Besides, I don't know many aspects of the Scattered Stars Island, let alone the management. If I spend all my time managing this island, how can I have time to cultivate? Xuexinshi didn't step back, but slowly got up, pointing to a red area on the sea map in the main hall of his mansion. There's no time for you to prepare. This war will inevitably break out in a few months or half a year. Are you going to wait for the war to start before you take over the Scattered Stars Island? Han Fei paused. So, from the very beginning, you've been ready for me to take over the Scattered Stars Island? Xuexinshi shook his head slightly. If you hadn't grown to this level, even if I had a deal with your father, I wouldn't have given the Scattered Stars Island to you easily. Han Fei pondered for a moment. At least give me some buffer time. Xuexinshi nodded. 3 days. Han Fei shook his head. No, I have an idea. You can decide after listening to it. After a while, Xuexinshi took a deep breath. What Han Fei said just now shocked him even more than having a half-king realm powerhouse following him. He could absorb demonic energy to cultivate? If this was known by others, such as the big clans in the Thousand-Star City, or even the 7 major sects, the consequences would be unimaginable. This reminded Xuexinshi of a very old story. According to legend, in the history of mankind, there was a period of history when human beings pursued to become sea demons. At that stage, it was said that sea demons were transformed from human beings, and the two sides fought fiercely. Han Fei could absorb demonic energy to cultivate? This didn't make sense at all. Even Xuexinshi couldn't help but feel a little horrified at this moment. What if he bet on the wrong person? After a long silence, Xuexinshi said, "Don't tell anyone about this. Otherwise, I can't protect you. You'll be hunted by the entire Thousand-Star City. No one will be willing to give such great power to someone with a questionable identity." Han Fei grinned and said, "Trust me, you will be glad for the choice you made today." The reason why Han Fei told him such a secret was just to test Xuexinshi. In Han Fei's opinion, Xuexinshi was completely on his side. It seemed like he had no other choice. However, Han Fei couldn't be sure. If even the highest commander on the Scattered Stars Island didn't trust him, what would happen in the future? What would the consequences be? Han Fei would certainly fight for the king's corpse. And Han Fei didn't intend to wait until the final battle broke out to grab the king's corpse. Therefore, he was prepared to act now. Since he had the ability to use the demonic aura to cultivate, he could naturally absorb it. There was no need for him to give it to the sea demons or exchange it for resources with them. In fact, when he obtained the Gemini Divine technique, he gradually had this idea. The old turtle under the Empyrean waterfall could accumulate spirit awakening fluid and other things from that pit. Then, this meant that the outside world was related to the place where the king's corpse was sealed. Han Fei believed that with his current strength, it was not impossible for him to dive into the pool and snatch the king's corpse first. However, this idea required the cooperation of others. It was not just the cooperation of the turtle under the pool. Xuexinshi had been in charge of the Scattered Stars Island for many years and knew this place very well. It would be for the best if they could get his cooperation. Therefore, Han Fei took the risk and leaked some secrets that were actually unimportant in the first place. Han Fei disappeared from the city lord's mansion. Although Chu Qing, Yang Kuan, and the others had left the vicinity, the perception range of the Venerables was extremely large. As the top powerhouses on the Scattered Stars Island, their strength even exceeded Xuexinshi's. Therefore, their sole perception had never left the city lord's mansion. The time of Han Fei's return was too coincidental. He didn't come back earlier or later, but on the eve of the outbreak of the war. What if there was no problem? These Venerables naturally didn't believe it. Besides, Han Fei's strength was too terrifying. With the power of an advanced explorer, he beat Yang Kuan to the point that he couldn't fight back, and he had also comprehended the law of confinement. This law of confinement was too terrifying. Just imagine, if a Venerable was sealed in this area, Could he really fight with only his physical strength? Therefore, no matter what, they would not let Han Fei leave their sight. But after a long time, Xuexinqi had already left the city lord's mansion to patrol the battlefield and ask around. But Han Fei seemed to have disappeared. Realizing that something was wrong, Chu Qing stepped into the city lord's mansion, and his heart sank. No one is here? Chu Qing immediately asked, General Xue, where did Han Fei go? Xuexinqi smiled and said disdainfully, On the Scattered Stars Island, everyone has their own things to do. As the commander, although the Star Order token hasn't been given to him, Han Fei also has his own things to do. You don't have to worry about it. Yi Kai, the venerable of the Yi family, heard the conversation between the two and couldn't help but ask, General Xue, do you know what you are doing? Xuexinqi said with a straight face, Of course I know what I am doing. What I'm afraid of is that you don't know what you are doing, right? On the Scattered Stars Island, I'm the Supreme Commander and the God of War. Even if you are advanced venerables, you have to behave yourself. Otherwise, the people of the entire Scattered Stars Island will teach you a lesson. Even if the strength of a commander-level figure was not that strong, these idle venerables who lived a comfortable life in the big families in the Thousand-Star City couldn't compare to him. On this Scattered Stars Island, Xuexinqi's word was heaven and earth. If they dared to attack Xuexinqi, it would be they who buried and destroyed the Scattered Stars Island. At that time, the big families would become the enemies of the world. No matter how many strong masters there were, they would eventually be destroyed in the hearts of all humans. If they wanted to travel in the Yin-Yang heaven someday, that was because he had to face being hunted by anyone at all times. Yang Kuan asked, What should we do now? Xuexinqi does whatever he wants. He has been in charge of the Scattered Stars Island for so many years and has never cared about us. Now, is he going to turn against us? Yi Kai also said with an ugly face, Han Fei is a big threat. His growth is too fast, and the growth of his strength is even more terrifying. How many years has it been? He is already so strong. If we give him a few more years and he becomes a venerable, what will happen? Chu Qing snorted coldly. How can it be so simple to become a venerable? Don't think too much. However, Han Fei is indeed a monster. We still need to report this matter to our clan. Now, what are Xuexinqi and Han Fei plotting? That's what I'm most worried about. Yang Kuan said, Who cares what they are plotting? How can Han Fei not come out when the war starts? Isn't he going to become a king? He claims to be a king. How can he ignore the affairs of the Scattered Stars Island? Chu Qing and the others complained, but they couldn't find Han Fei and didn't know where to start. Just as they were complaining, under the Empyrean waterfall, a black mist drilled into this deep pool. Han Fei even saw Big Yellow, who was eating fish on a stone. Big Yellow nibbled the fish from time to time and looked in the direction of the entrance of the Empyrean waterfall from time to time, muttering to himself, I heard that Han Fei seems to be back. Han Fei wondered, didn't Granny Yin become a law enforcer long ago? Why is Big Yellow still here? However, this was not a good time to meet him. He could go on a killing spree and return with a high profile, but he couldn't be under the watch of others all the time. Otherwise, even cultivation and breakthroughs would become a problem. Han Fei didn't want to take over the war as soon as he came back. Up to now, the situation in the 10,000 Demon Valley was unknown. If he took over the Scattered Stars Island, he might not even have time to go to the outer sea. Then how could he find out the situation in the 10,000 Demon Valley? How much time was left before the war? After all, how long could the old turtle at the bottom of the pool suppress him? After a moment, the black shadow Han Fei drilled not far from the old turtle. Because at this moment, Han Fei was pure black, and the old turtle didn't notice him at all. At this moment, it was the first time that Han Fei met this old turtle face to face. Information emerged in his eyes. Name, 1000 Mark Star Turtle Introduction, the legendary turtle of seals. This turtle shell is covered with strange patterns, like thousands of intertwining hands. It's actually a natural seal that can suppress all kinds of laws. Star turtles are born with arrays and are good at sealing, escaping, and fighting. They are extremely rare. Level 79 Quality Legendary Law Enforcement Law of Gravity contains spiritual energy greater than 189,808 points. Edible effect, there is a certain chance that it can be used in arrays. Collectible Seal Pearl Unabsorbable. Note, those who are not array masters should try not to be enemies with the 1000-mark star turtle. Wow, legendary? After reading the information of this old turtle, even Han Fei was shocked. He didn't expect this old turtle to be a legendary creature. This was the second legendary creature that Han Fei encountered in the wild. The last time was under the Ice God Gorge, and he encountered the Tri-Light Blazing Cold Lobster. But now it was under the Empyrean Waterfall. He was truly a great hermit hiding in the world. No wonder legendary creatures were always hard to find. The old turtle couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow! Is this 1000-mark star turtle?" Han Fei asked in surprise, "You know it too?" The old turtle immediately said, "Of course. This is my turtle heritage. I've seen a king-level star turtle that can suppress the sea and seal the sky. It's almost as powerful as me. Han Fei, can I possess this turtle?" Han Fei immediately shouted in his heart, "Don't even think about it. This tortoise is a benefactor to us humans. It has been suppressed here for tens of millions of years, so how could we let you possess it? What do you take me for?" The old turtle said, "Think about it. If I possess this turtle, I can become a venerable in a few days. With my heritage, I can reach the advanced venerable realm in 10 years at most. Wouldn't it be a great help to you?" Han Fei snorted. "I don't need it. Old turtle, remember this. Although I am evil and arrogant in the eyes of the sea monsters, I am a legend and a heavenly talent in the human race. However, in the human race, I'm a legend, a heavenly talent, and even their king. As a king, I won't allow you to attack those who have helped the human race. No one." First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1379. At the bottom of the Empyrean Waterfall, the 1000-mark star turtle's eyes were still closed. Inside its body, power was surging occasionally. But then, a yellowish-white pattern that looked like an arm would light up on the turtle's body. Immediately after, the energy that was about to surge out was forcefully suppressed, and everything returned to normal once again. Han Fei couldn't help but have a mixed feeling. If his guess was right, this star turtle must have become a semi-venerable. Also, it was about to make a breakthrough. Han Fei could even imagine that if this turtle became a venerable, it would cause a huge commotion. Also, because it had absorbed the power of the deep-sea demon here for too long, it wouldn't be weak if it made a breakthrough. The 1000-mark star turtle didn't know that someone was in front of it yet. Suddenly, an astral tidal plate appeared in the middle of the water. The 1000-mark star tortoise suddenly opened its eyes and scanned the token in front of it. But then, its eyeballs began to shake, as if it were looking for something. Han Fei said, "Senior Turtle, don't make any noise. I'm Han Fei." Han Fei used to live next to the waterfall and stayed with this old turtle for a while. Although they didn't have much contact, the star turtle's senses were far better than Han Fei's at that time. The old turtle actually knew Han Fei's life in the Empyrean Waterfall. Also, Han Fei had made deals with this old turtle more than once. Therefore, when Han Fei's name appeared, the old turtle seemed to be slightly relieved. The old turtle asked, "Where are you?" Han Fei said, "I'm 10 meters away from you. Don't use your eyes. Just scan with your senses." In the next second, Han Fei sensed that someone's perception scanned him quickly from left to right. After scanning dozens of times, the star turtle finally said, "In front of me, there's only a black substance that can't be seen by the naked eye or even detected by my senses. Are you really Han Fei?" Han Fei said, "If you don't trust me, You should recognize Marshal Shue's 13-star badge, right? This badge is his keepsake. The old turtle said softly, Okay, I trust you. Recently, a lot of venerables have come to the island. If you were an enemy, it would be impossible for you to steal Shueishenqi's star insignia token without anyone noticing. The old turtle continued, Shueishenqi's order is the highest order on the island. Tell me, what is your purpose? Han Fei said, No problem. I want to go to the cave below you. The star tortoise was stunned and couldn't help saying, Didn't he tell you that I can't leave this place at all? If I leave even a little, it might cause the mountain to shake, and it might even cause the seal to break in advance. Han Fei said, I know, but look at my current state. I'm no different from this pool. Even if there is a tiny crack, I can squeeze in. If it really doesn't work, I can drill a small hole in your body and go down. The star tortoise was surprised. Even a small crack? A small hole the size of a drop of water will do. The star tortoise pondered for a moment, then said, Even if you can go down, I have the 1,000-fold seal below me. If you go down, you won't be able to come out. You'll have to wait until I become a venerable before you can leave. Han Fei said, Marshal Shue has already told me about that. I have my ways to come back. The star tortoise said, There's one more thing. Do you know that it's not a sea expansion king, but a deep-sea giant demon? Demonic chi is surging down there, and the tentacles are still alive. If you go down as a human, I'm afraid you'll be stuffed to death. Han Fei said, It doesn't matter. Just give me a small opening and let me go down. I have my ways to keep myself alive. Also, Senior Tortoise, since I'm here for you, I'll stand on your side when the seal is broken. Otherwise, on the day of breaking the seal, it would not be enough to have only Marshal Shue as a supremacy to protect you. I have the strength of a venerable too. Can I protect you? You? The strength of a venerable? The 1,000-seal star tortoise felt that it had heard something strange. How many years has it been? You were only a human hidden fisher when you first came here, and only 10 years have passed? You're telling me that you have the strength of a venerable? Han Fei said, Senior Tortoise, you'll know everything when I get to the cave below you. The 1,000-seal star tortoise sent out a thought, and the 13-star token flew to its eyes. The 1,000-seal star tortoise said to the token, Did you give this token to him? Shueishenqi's voice came from the token, Yes, this is a secret plan. Only you, me, and Han Fei know it. Do you want to wait for the day when the seal is broken, when the sea demon venerable attacks and the human venerables covets you? At that time, who would protect you? If you can break this broken body now, it'll just be a fake show. By then, there will be more than 1 or 2 people protecting you. The old tortoise said, Okay, I believe you. Having dealt with Shueishenqi for so long, the 1,000-seal star tortoise knew that Shueishenqi was not a problem. It also knew that Shueishenqi only had one purpose, which was to destroy the sea demons. He was different from the venerables who had come recently. Besides, after a long time, the old tortoise even knew that not all human beings were on their side. In this world, there were definitely people who were afraid of death. Even a venerable or a venerable family would still surrender to the sea demons in the face of absolute strength. In fact, the old tortoise turned its back on the sea demons because it couldn't stand the behavior of some sea demons. The old tortoise didn't want to see the sea demons unify the world and destroy other races. All of this just represented the interests of a small group of people. Removing the seal, the star tortoise returned the token to Han Fei and said, Come into my mouth. Han Fei immediately surged, and seeing the star tortoise open its mouth slightly, he directly crawled in. At this moment, Han Fei also felt that someone's perception was scanning this place. There was no one else except a venerable who could explore this place at will. Han Fei didn't know which venerable it was. However, neither he nor the star tortoise would give the venerable a chance to explore it. There was a crack under the shell of the star tortoise, which was formed by the impact of the power of the giant deep-sea demon all year round. The old tortoise would also absorb the spirit-awakening fluid from these cracks every day. Han Fei's body of black fog soon drilled into the crack in the flesh. Then he saw a bit of green liquid flowing in. If it wasn't the spirit-awakening fluid, what was it? Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, Senior Tortoise, since there is spirit-awakening fluid under your body, why don't you take more? Scatter it in the hands of countless humans on the Scattered Stars Island? That can also reduce the pressure on you. The Star Tortoise said, although I'm here, it doesn't mean that I can absorb as much as I want from the crack. Once I absorb too much, it will be easy for me to let more king demonic energy rush into my body. Then it will be even harder for me to control myself, which will greatly reduce the time to break the seal. Han Fei didn't think it made sense. With a thought, a cloud of white mist suddenly appeared. The Gemini Divine technique was also a forbidden breaking technique. One body was outside and the other was inside, just like the star teleportation technique. As long as the space was not completely sealed, he could escape. The black fog body was hard to find, and the white fog body could sneak in. That was Han Fei's plan. The Star Tortoise asked in surprise, an incarnation? Han Fei said, you don't have to worry about that. I'll live in your body for a while. Then, Han Fei said straightforwardly, Senior, I'm going over. When Han Fei's wisp of white mist crawled into the crack that was as small as a fingernail, he immediately felt a terrifying power rushing into his body. Even though he was in the form of white mist, Han Fei still felt that even his soul was dizzy. The Star Tortoise said, guard your mind. Don't make my crack bigger. Crawl down slowly. Han Fei thought to himself, Calabash, absorb it. Before he came, Han Fei had already turned into a half-mermaid. Also, because his demonic heritage was extremely high, it had exceeded the boundary of mortal heritage. So, he was only dizzy when he was overwhelmed by the demonic energy at the beginning. Han Fei, on the other hand, said while crawling out, Senior Tortoise, since there is so much demonic energy down there, why do you still want demonic stones? The Star Tortoise said, you'll know when you reach the bottom of this cave. Han Fei didn't know what was going on. After half an hour, he finally crawled out of the tiny gap. When Han Fei was completely immersed in the pit that was filled with spirit-awakening fluid and demonic energy, he had complicated feelings. Damn it! Can a king produce so much spirit-awakening fluid? Han Fei was about to ask the old tortoise, when he felt that a gossamer power was crawling into his body together with the demonic energy. Han Fei immediately said, Old Yuan, don't go too far. I haven't eaten it yet and you're already doing it? The old tortoise said, Han Fei, this place is very suitable for me to recover. There is some chaotic chi here that you can't use at all. Why don't you give it to me? I can give you a hand at a critical moment. Chaotic chi? Han Fei slightly frowned. How do you know that I can't use it? Although it was a question, Han Fei didn't stop the old tortoise. Last time, the guy was hit on the back by the demon purification pot, and even his shell was cracked. If this old guy was smart, he wouldn't have done it this time. Besides, Han Fei also believed that although the old tortoise could steal some things from the outside world, he couldn't resist the suppression of the demon purification pot. So, he didn't really care. Han Fei's misty body quickly turned into a half-mermaid. Because he was used to the appearance of the Fish Dragon King, he still looked like the Fish Dragon King. Although the Star Tortoise noticed that Han Fei had changed, it only changed from a misty form to a human form. In its opinion, it was quite amazing that this amazing technique could change forms at will. It had the ability to fuse with special contractual spiritual beasts. But what surprised him more was not the ability to transform. The Star Tortoise was surprised. You can completely resist the terrifying scourge of demonic energy? Han Fei grinned and thought to himself, how can I resist it? His body was already swollen. A tremendous amount of demonic energy had begun to be injected into Forge the Universe. Seizing this opportunity, Han Fei crawled to the bottom of the pit with a swish. He wanted to use a power like the close-distance technique, but he suddenly found that he couldn't use the close-distance technique, the star-shifting technique, or even the heavenly illusionary divine walking technique. The old tortoise said, "Don't try. You can't use any of these powers under the suppression of the King's Taoist aura. I feel that there are a lot of demonic energy crystals below. That thing is not bad, you can take it." Han Fei was releasing demonic energy, which condensed into a dazzling shield. Since the demonic energy was so rich, Han Fei didn't care about the demonic energy at all. Not only that, Han Fei waved his hand, and hundreds of sea-swallowing seashells appeared. A large amount of spirit awakening fluid was crazily poured into the sea-swallowing seashells. This was much easier than stealing spirit awakening fluid from the undersea smoke. He was now soaking in seawater diluted with spirit awakening fluid. It was not an exaggeration to say that the seawater was spirit awakening fluid. Other people wanted spirit awakening fluid? That was a caddy at a caddy. And he wanted spirit awakening fluid? They came by the ton. Oh no, now it was all sea-swallowing seashells one by one. The amount of spirit awakening fluid that could be contained in a sea-swallowing seashell had already exceeded the total amount of an undersea chimney. In other words, any random sea-swallowing seashell contained 1,000,000 kilograms of spirit awakening fluid. This number really scared Han Fei. Damn, it turns out that spirit awakening fluid is so worthless? The total amount of these 100 sea-swallowing seashells added up would probably be hundreds of millions of kilograms of spirit awakening fluid. Of course, this spirit awakening fluid was not as thick as pure spirit awakening fluid. If the diluted part was removed, about 1/5 of it would be left. However, even so, it would still be 20 million kilograms. Han Fei wondered, even a king can't release so much spirit awakening fluid at once, right? I'm afraid it's accumulated over countless years. Huff! The star tortoise heaved a long sigh, feeling that the pressure was greatly reduced. Han Fei, hurry up and collect all the spirit awakening fluid. If you had told me you were capable of this, I would have let you in a long time ago. Second, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1380. Han Fei controlled the sea-swallowing seashells with the void lines. He, on the other hand, was quickly swimming to the bottom of the cave. As he swam, Han Fei's body became fatter. The cave wasn't large at first, with a radius of no more than 300 meters. The walls around the cave had been jade-like, and formed a solid barrier of demonic qi. Han Fei even suspected that the terrifying demonic qi could probably cover the entire Scattered Stars Island if this place was exposed. After swimming for another 20 kilometers, Han Fei suddenly found that a demonic stone had appeared in front of him. Huh! Information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Name Ultra-Quality Demonic Stone Introduction. This is made of the essence of spiritual liquid and demonic qi. It contains tremendous spiritual energy and demonic qi. However, the demonic qi is violent and conflicts with regular demonic qi, so it's very difficult to absorb. Spiritual energy greater than 560,666 points. Effect, inedible absorbable. Han Fei was dumbfounded when he saw that. Not because of one ultra-quality demonic stone, but because the number of ultra-quality demonic stones had filled up the entire bottom of the cave. Damn it, Han Fei had never seen such a scene before. There was a reason why the spirit awakening fluid and demonic stones appeared at the same time. At this moment, the star tortoise said, "Do you know why I need so many demonic stones now? I don't need ultra-quality demonic stones. I only need regular demonic stones. As long as I throw the regular low-level demonic stones into it, I can absorb demonic qi and relieve some of my pressure." Han Fei picked up an ultra-quality demonic stone and observed it while he asked, "How do you throw it? Can you throw it into the gap between your fingernails?" The star tortoise said. I just need to eat it and poop it out, right? Han Fei. Han Fei couldn't have felt better. He thought to himself, are you implying that you poop out all these ultra-quality demonic stones? F***CKU. Did I just rush into your sh**t pit? The star tortoise. The star tortoise was stunned too. He roared angrily, what's with your reaction? I don't poop. I'm a half-venerable expert, all right? Han Fei simply covered his body with demonic qi and held back his disgust. As long as there were treasures in the cesspit, why couldn't he go down? However, Han Fei asked in confusion, wait, if that was the case, why didn't they use this method before? In this way, won't we be able to clear this place in an endless cycle? Star Tortoise. If you didn't have the ability to split into two, you wouldn't have dared to come in. After all, the sea race and humans are two different races with different cultivation methods. Not everyone can be like you, who can even devour demonic qi. Once they were unable to devour it, they would clash with each other until their bodies exploded. Even venerable ones are no exception. Can't you clean it up? The star tortoise continued. In the past, people who were about to die used this method to enter this place. You intend to help me clean this place with your sea-swallowing seashell. Unfortunately, when he went in and was still alive, he could indeed clean it up. However, once he died, his sea-swallowing seashells and sun-moon shells would be corroded by the king's power. When the massive amount of energy surged out, the impact on this turtle was even greater. Hearing the star tortoise's explanation, Han Fei realized that it was really weird. These were all real ultra-quality demonic stones. Once he used the body of a sea demon, he could immediately use it for cultivation, and it would be endless. Han Fei took out a sun-moon shell. Collect, collect, collect. The massive amount of ultra-quality demonic stones disappeared in large swathes. After sinking for nearly hundreds of meters, a sun-moon shell was finally filled up. The space of the sun-moon shell was completely different from that of a sea-swallowing seashell. The largest sun-moon shell was hundreds of thousands of times larger than a sea-swallowing seashell. Han Fei took a quick look and found that he had collected more than 100,000 ultra-quality demonic stones. Han Fei couldn't help but scratch his scalp. He was stunned by this number. What did this mean? There was not much difference between ultra-quality demonic stones and ultra-quality spiritual stones. Maybe others couldn't use them, but he could. After all, he could transform into a sea demon. These 100,000 ultra-quality demonic plants were equivalent to a total amount of 50 billion demonic qi. In other words, this was the greatest opportunity he had ever received in his life. The demonic qi was probably inexhaustible. Besides, he wasn't done yet. Han Fei took out another sun-moon shell and absorbed it crazily again. After sinking for another 600 meters, he finally collected all the demonic stones. At this moment, Han Fei's net worth exploded. The total amount of demonic qi exceeded 100 billion. What the F***ck did this mean? No wonder the sea demons wanted to take down the scattered stars island. Just the amount of demonic qi in this place alone had reached a shocking figure. Even so, Han Fei hadn't counted the circle of jade-like rock walls. After the last ultra-quality demonic stone was absorbed by Han Fei, the star tortoise heaved a sigh of relief. If you had this ability 10 years ago, I could have held on for another 100 years. It's a pity that you came too late. Even if you have collected all the ultra-quality demonic stones here, I can't hold on for long because I've reached my limit. At this moment, Han Fei's body had become much fatter. This had nothing to do with demonic qi. It was the energy contained in demonic qi and spirit awakening fluid. Every time it washed him, some would be left. As a result, he felt that his body was being instilled with energy crazily as soon as he came in. If it weren't for the demon purification pot, he would have exploded and died. The old turtle said, Han Fei boy, if you don't mind, you can let me absorb this energy for a while. This can also save you from the difficulty of digesting the energy that enters your body. Han Fei was speechless. That's very thoughtful of you. Fine, if you have this ability you can absorb it, but the absorption can't be too fast or excessive. It has to be similar to the normal absorption of my body. The old turtle nodded. No problem. Then, Han Fei felt that the energy that melted into his body formed a vortex between his eyebrows and was quickly absorbed by the old turtle. And the environment here wouldn't suppress his energy anymore. Han Fei thought to himself, this place is too F***king suitable for cultivation. He had just come in and hadn't seen the corpse of the giant deep-sea demon yet, but he had already gained so many benefits. What else was down there? Han Fei didn't even dare to imagine it. Further down, there was a green mist. Han Fei extracted the water in the sea-swallowing seashells filled with spirit-awakening fluid one by one, leaving only the pure spirit-awakening fluid. Han Fei's water control technique was very good, so this was not a big problem. It only took half an hour for Han Fei to fill up 100 sea-swallowing seashells. However, the lower he went, the more rapidly the concentration of spirit-awakening fluid dropped. If it was 20% before, now it might even be less than 5%. When he clearly realized that the concentration of spirit-awakening fluid was dropping rapidly, Han Fei stopped collecting. Then he stuffed the sea-swallowing seashells and the sun-moon shells into Forge the Universe. Han Fei's eyes were also fixed on the misty green cave. Han Fei took a breath, knowing that although he had gained a lot of benefits by collecting the spirit-awakening fluid and the ultra-quality demonic stones, the real benefit was the corpse. A corpse coveted by the experts of the Sea Demon King City and the Thousand Star City was now placed in front of him. How could Han Fei let it go? Puff! Han Fei plunged into the misty green mist. However, when Han Fei plunged into this mist, he suddenly felt a terrifying and boundless pressure suddenly fell on him. Not good, it's the pressure of a king. Puff! Han Fei immediately vomited a mouthful of blood, and the invincible will instantly condensed into a golden body phantom. He wanted to use the power of Law Enforcer, but he couldn't use it at all. The meridians all over Han Fei's body bulged, and he suddenly jumped out of the green mist. Han Fei was horrified. Old Yuan, do you feel it? Is that the pressure of a king? The old turtle said, it's indeed beyond my expectations. It's not just the pressure of an ordinary king. The strength of this giant deep-sea demon should not be weak. Not to say it has reached the peak stage of the sea expansion realm, but it should be in the middle or high realm. Although you are not weak now, your realm is still low. Although your soul is strong, it is still too weak compared to a king. And tens of thousands of years of king aura have accumulated here. It's reasonable that you can't bear it for a while. You have to get used to it slowly. Don't be too hasty. Han Fei's heart sank. He had planned to sneak away the king's corpse first, but now it seemed to be a different story. However, he was still a little unable to withstand this force. Han Fei immediately said, No, it's not easy for me to come here. I can't go back like this. Otherwise, it won't affect the overall situation. Old Yuan, I have to make a breakthrough. The old turtle was speechless. You still want to make a breakthrough? In just 3 years you have almost crossed a whole big realm. If you make another breakthrough, you will grow too fast and your foundation will be unstable. Han Fei looked solemn. My foundation is unstable? I know it myself. In the past 2 years, I have been fighting and polishing my foundation. Although there may be some shortcomings, as long as I don't rush to the peak, it won't affect me much. The old turtle said, If you want to make a breakthrough now, you can do it here, but you have to experience the polishing of the king's pressure first. In this way, if you can hold on for these 3 months, it's not impossible for you to reach the peak. Looking at the misty green mist, Han Fei sat cross-legged on it. Just like that, he could feel a pressure that could topple mountains and overturn seas. However, fortunately, the pressure didn't directly rush into his meridians. Therefore, he could still bear the pressure. It was not too exaggerated. After all, his real body and soul were indeed comparable to that of a venerable. The star turtle asked, "How about it? Can you break through the king's pressure?" Han Fei said casually, "I'm not in a hurry. Let me get used to it for a few days." Han Fei frowned slightly and moved his body bit by bit into the green misty king's pressure. In his body, the demon god scripture was running, and the surrounding demonic energy was crazily pouring into his body. With so many ultra-quality demonic stones, Han Fei naturally didn't care about the demonic energy. However, he still had to make a breakthrough with the demonic energy. Although it was not a breakthrough from an advanced explorer to an advanced peak level, his strength would certainly be improved. His combat power, soul, and physique would all grow, and he could swallow a lot of power. Because Han Fei's physique was too strong, if he wanted to make a breakthrough, he had to cleanse his body, temper his soul, and stretch his spiritual heritage, which was far more than ordinary people could compare. This place could also be called an excellent place for a breakthrough. Third, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1381. Under the Empyrean waterfall, right above the king's body, Han Fei's body was surging with demonic energy. Round after round of scouring, Han Fei's strength was growing rapidly. While Han Fei was cultivating, in the outside world, the battle on the Scattered Stars Island had basically stabilized. After all, Han Fei had killed a powerful enemy at the venerable level, as well as many Tao Seekers. In addition, more than 4,000 sea demons were killed by the human side. As a result, the hidden fishers who had been dispatched to fight returned to the Scattered Stars Island. This was another terrifying combat power. Because of the death of the venerables on the battlefield, many Tao Seekers retreated in panic. This finally solved the urgent problem for the Scattered Stars Island. At this time, the various departments of the Scattered Stars Island were calculating the casualties and cleaning the battlefield. According to incomplete statistics, in the consecutive 7 days of crazy war, the average number of human beings who died every day was as high as 50,000. This cruel war had also allowed the recruits to grow up quickly. They shed their immaturity and became experienced. The refining halls, alchemy rooms, and all kinds of carnival shops were very lively. Although many humans had perished in this war, there were even more sea demons that had perished. In fact, it could even be described as innumerable. All kinds of materials and resources had already filled the 4 logistics divisions to the brim. In order not to affect the peace of the 36 towns, some people had already secretly begun to transport materials to the 36 towns. Some things that weren't good enough in the Scattered Stars Island were top-grade treasures in the 36 towns, and many people liked them. Besides, the 36 towns had a large population, and there were countless rich people. At first, a few warehouses were sent away, and then dozens of warehouses were also digested. In the past, there would only be a large supply of materials every half a year or more, and the quantity was only the capacity of 2 or 3 warehouses. In the 36 towns, many people were crazily spreading the news of the human victory. After all, human resources had never been so abundant. But the fact was that there hadn't been any decent war in the past few decades. Of course, these ordinary people, or low-level cultivators who were in the growth period, didn't know much about the war. They didn't know that the crisis of human beings had just begun. In a war, of course, there would be sacrifices. If there were sacrifices, there would inevitably be an outflow of resources. Therefore, judging the situation of the human race just by looking at the amount of resources was, of course, very one-sided. But no matter what, a victory was crucial to the morale of the human race. The Scattered Stars Island didn't want to bring negative emotions to the 36 towns. Many businessmen were also preaching the benefits of winning the war. Shueshenqi stood on a huge reef with his hands behind his back. He seemed to see countless humans cheering and jumping for joy. "That's fine too. A victory can boost your confidence and ignite your fighting spirit. At this very moment, all the merchants in the 36 towns were overjoyed. This time, there were simply too many resources. The spirit tools that used to be sold at sky-high prices were now sold at a 30% discount. It could even be said that with the surge in supply this time, most of the special materials had already begun to be sold at reduced prices. The market was extremely enthusiastic. In fact, the 36 towns had a large population. Every time the selling price dropped by a level, the number of people buying doubled. Therefore, it was far more than enough for these people to digest the war resources of the scattered stars island. Of course, the 36 towns could only consume some low-level materials, which were usually below the level of hanging fishers. But for those who were in the middle or late stage of hanging fishers or even hidden fishers, they basically used spiritual weapons. Even if it was a low-quality spiritual weapon, it was still a spiritual weapon. No matter how bad the spiritual weapon was, the level of the weapon itself was high enough to be used in the level 3 fishery. This kind of hard currency was naturally more circulated in the Thousand-Star City. With the accelerated circulation of resources, except for some powerhouses above the hidden fisher level on the Scattered Stars Island, the Thousand-Star City and the 36 towns were very happy about this. But only a small number of people knew that these gains came at a price. These were the resources exchanged for the deaths of countless people. Therefore, when semi-divine weapons were almost common on the Scattered Stars Island, when the sea demons came aggressively, it seemed that human beings were in peril. In the eyes of the garrison on the island, once the Scattered Stars Island was breached, human beings would be trapped in the sky. There would be no place for human beings on the vast sea. Besides, everyone below the level of explorer thought that spirit awakening fluid could only be collected on the Scattered Stars Island. Therefore, if the Scattered Stars Island was breached by the sea demons, human beings would no longer have spirit awakening fluid to use. And once there was no spirit awakening fluid, how many human children would not be able to awaken their spirits? In the long run, human beings would probably be destroyed. This was the thought of most people on the Scattered Stars Island. And the leaders also needed them to have this thought, so that these garrison troops could bear a sense of responsibility. After the war, it was a cultivation frenzy. On the Scattered Stars Island, when the name Han Fei appeared in the streets and alleys and various combat troops again, the most heated discussion was in the carnival shops. In the west city of the Scattered Stars Island, in a carnival shop along the river, a person was surrounded by a large group of people. This person was bragging. "You may not believe it. Do you know our captain, Yu Ling Yun, the double fiery swords? At that time, our spiritual energy was exhausted and we were exhausted. The enemy's sea spirit level harpoon cut through the sky and almost succeeded in a sneak attack. But guess what?" The onlookers all said, "What? Tell us." Someone was speechless. "Son of AB*TCH, why are you keeping us guessing? So what if you're a scout?" That person picked up the Liehua wine beside him and drank it in one gulp. He smacked his lips and said, in the blink of an eye, a figure appeared out of thin air just like that. He crushed the sea spirit realm great demon with a single hand, and it was reduced to ashes in a puff of smoke. Everyone exclaimed, and someone said, "Just one blow?" It's said that when Han Fei left our Scattered Stars Island, he was only a hidden fisher. Someone echoed, "That's right. Besides, I've heard that there is a death barrier between a law enforcer and an explorer. To break through this barrier, one must go against the heavens and fight against the heavenly punishment in order to become an explorer." Someone sighed. "I'm not surprised. When Han Fei left our Scattered Stars Island, it was said that he killed a sea spirit level powerhouse with his own hands. It's been 10 years since this happened, hasn't it?" The person who was only listening to the story clicked his tongue and said, "What do you know? Do you know that after Captain Han saved our captain, he flicked his sleeve and the sea was like a sword? It stretched for hundreds of miles and was almost 300 meters tall. He pushed all the way to the inland sea, and wherever he went, all the sea demons were slaughtered. Do you know? That blow alone was as powerful as the 8,000 of us who fought for half a day. You can imagine how terrifying Captain Han's strength is now. Someone sighed. I heard that the sword wave was more than a kilometer high. Someone said, is it 100 kilometers? I heard that the sword wave is still rampaging in the sea. It's gone tens of thousands of kilometers. Puff. On a table in the distance, someone directly spat out the liquor in his mouth. A cold woman was speechless. Damn, which idiot spread this rumor? At this table, there were 4 other people present. Hearing this, they couldn't help chuckling. It's just a rumor. In less than a day, Han Fei has already become a legend. Some people even said that Han Fei killed a peak-level Dao-seeking cultivator with 1 punch and killed a venerable with 3 moves. Are they all iron-headed fish brains? A manipulator girl chuckled and said, it's indeed a bit exaggerated. Alas. Sister Xiaoyu, didn't that Han Fei come from your Blue Sea town? I heard that he's not old. Did you know him before? The armorist, who was eating dried fish, smiled and said, Captain and Han Fei didn't come to the Scattered Stars Island in the same batch. There's a gap of several years between them. How could I know him? Xiaoyu had never returned home since she went to the Scattered Stars Island. She only occasionally asked someone to send a few letters home. Now the girl had grown up. Xiaoyu, who was determined to be a great fishing master for the rest of her life, was now the captain of a 5-person team. After many years, her strength had reached the realm of an advanced hidden fisher. A few years ago, in the secret realm, she narrowly escaped death. At the moment of life and death, Xiaoyu had already realized that she no longer pursued the improvement of strength and realm, but had the heart of a real expert, to pursue the unknown Tao in the vast world. At this moment, she was no longer chasing blindly for the sake of catching up with someone. She knew that she was not talented enough, and that she had to improve herself well. In the future, when she reached that point, she wouldn't be an ordinary person. Actually, it's possible. Everyone. The armorist asked, what's possible? Smack. Xiaoyu put down the cup. The battle is over. Everyone is tired. Go back and digest your gains this time. Hey, Captain, where are you going? The Empyrean Waterfall. The City Lord's Mansion. Juin Ling said timidly, Marshal, Juin Ling wants to see you. Come in. As soon as Juin Ling entered the room, she saw Shueishenqi speaking to a group of people. Shueishenqi said, we still need 10 Nanyanmu furnaces, which must be completed within half a month. In addition, sell the semi-divine weapons in stock at a low price. Uncle Zhong, you can handle this matter. Yes, Marshal. Shueishenqi said, Dong Shui, post-war compensation is a big deal. There were too many casualties in this battle. Inform the families of those who died in the 36 towns in batches. Make them think that this is a normal death in battle. It doesn't matter if it takes a long time. You can handle it. Yes, Marshal. Shueishenqi said, the method of sea demons transforming into human beings has a long history, especially after this war. It's urgent to search for such sea demon spies. Zhang Ting, mobilize the heavenly talents of the Scattered Stars unit to search for such people throughout the island. You can do it yourself. Zhang Ting said, yes, Marshal. Shueishenqi asked, huh? What else? Zhang Ting smiled and said, well, I heard that Han Fei's strength has greatly increased after his return. This boy has always been casual, and now he's so strong. If something happens again, I'm afraid the Scattered Stars prison won't be able to take him. Shueishenqi put on a serious face and smiled. Don't worry, I won't ask you to take him again. Phew. That's good, that's good. After Shueishenqi arranged all kinds of things one by one, he turned his head to look at Juin Ling. What's the matter? Juin Ling was not good at beating around the bush. She said straightforwardly, Marshal, where is Han Fei? Shueishenqi took a deep look at Zhou Ling. He will appear when he should. This is a matter of life and death for mankind. Personal feelings should be put aside first. Zhou Ling, you should have heard the rumors. Han Fei killed a venerable. This is not a rumor. Zhou Ling's face tightened. Did he really kill a venerable? Shueishenqi said lightly. Han Fei can already kill a venerable. Although your progress is extremely fast and you have reached the peak of law enforcer, it's not enough. Do you understand what I mean? Zhou Ling bit her lip. Got it. Goodbye. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1382. At this moment, at the bottom of the Empyrean waterfall, Han Fei was still making a breakthrough. When Han Fei was still very weak, he was between a fishing master and a great fishing master. Every time he made a breakthrough, he would directly reach the peak. Only then would he think about polishing it. However, as time went on, he seemed to have forgotten this congenital advantage. However, he didn't lose this advantage. It was just that the void fishing art didn't lead Han Fei to do that. At this moment, Han Fei sat cross-legged for a whole day and night, constantly scouring his spiritual heritage and flesh with the pressure of a king and a massive amount of demonic energy. Crack, Han Fei's body was like a dry river. His bloated body had already recovered from the last breakthrough 6 hours ago. At this moment, he made another breakthrough. Under the pressure of a king, Han Fei's body became a little thinner. Huff! Activating the swallowing technique, Han Fei's body was like a vortex and his mouth was like a glutton, crazily absorbing the energy here. Old Turtle was shocked by Han Fei's rapid breakthrough. This growth was a little too casual. In just 2 days, he broke through 2 levels in a row? However, out of friendship, Old Turtle reminded him, "Is it really okay for you to improve so fast?" Han Fei said frankly, "I won't rush to the peak directly." On the 3rd day, Han Fei's body returned to its original, very strong, perfect form. At this time, Han Fei closed his eyes and information appeared in his mind. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 79, Advanced Explorer, Spiritual Energy 240, 000/240, 000 Spiritual Power, 40958/40958, Perception Range greater than 4,500 kilometers, Power greater than 1,024 waves, First Spiritual Heritage, Unknown, Second Spiritual Heritage, Unawakened. First Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, Level 67, Second Spiritual Beast, Unawakened, Main Art Sky Stealing Technique, Level 6 of Void Fishing, Venerable Level, Divine Quality. Seeing this information, Han Fei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, the significance of breaking through 2 levels was still different. Of course, the comprehensive improvement was not very big. His strength only increased by 100 wave. His spiritual power only increased by 1,000 point. In the later stage of the Waterwood Sky, Han Fei was actually trying to restore his spiritual power. Fortunately, he had split his soul out, so it wasn't difficult to replenish it. Besides, Han Fei had the void lines. As long as he had enough time, it was only a matter of time before his soul power was replenished. As for the upper limit of spiritual energy, Han Fei felt that he probably didn't need the upper limit of spiritual energy anymore. In fact, when one reached the level of an explorer, although they could not instantly absorb enough spiritual energy from the void, however, for explorers and Dao seekers, as long as they had enough resources and were prepared in advance, they could directly absorb them to fight a long battle. Therefore, the upper limit of spiritual energy was of little significance. Looking at his data, Han Fei was not surprised at all. If he were to slowly polish it, the data would probably look better. However, it was impossible to improve it by a large margin. Unless he could completely master the invincible golden body. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Old Yuan, how much chaotic energy did you swallow?" The old tortoise replied, "Not much. This emperor has only absorbed less than a strand up until now. Han Fei sneered. Han Fei admitted that the old tortoise's words were not true. However, Han Fei didn't want to stop the old tortoise, but just to remind him. By the way, Han Fei asked, Old Yuan, I have adapted to this Surface King's coercion. Besides, my strength has improved again. What do you think if I use this king's coercion to polish my invincible golden body? The old Yuan paused for a moment and said, Are you eager to improve your strength? Han Fei scoffed. Of course. The Scattered Stars Island is in such a situation now, and it will be my territory in the future. There are so many venerables who want to plunder in front of me. In the outer sea, there are countless sea demons eyeing me covetously. I have to find ways to improve my strength. The old tortoise said, There are only 3 ways for you to improve your strength now. Han Fei was stunned. 3? So few? The old tortoise couldn't help but sneer. How can there be so many fish falling from the sky? The first way is to polish the foundation. Although the growth is slow, it will be of great benefit to the future. The second way is to master the invincible golden body, which will increase your strength by another 20%. The third way is to disassemble spiritual energy. During this period of time, you don't have much time to concentrate on disassembling spiritual energy. You must know that the higher the degree of disassembling spiritual energy, the more thorough your understanding of power and the higher your combat power will be. Han Fei was speechless. Do I need you to tell me these 3 ways? Polishing oneself was what he had been doing all the time. Cultivating the invincible golden body required opportunities. As for the disassembling of spiritual energy, it took time. Sometimes, even if it took time, it might not be useful. It also required understanding. Han Fei said, None of these 3 ways seems to be able to solve my urgent problem. The old tortoise said, There are 2 ways to polish the foundation. To put it bluntly, it's the body's bearing of various powers, right? Han Fei nodded. Yes, and then? The old tortoise said again, You know, the body is the bearing of various powers, and to a greater extent, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Apart from the name spiritual energy, it's the body's bearing and use of this energy structure. Therefore, the deeper your foundation is polished, the higher your mastery of spiritual energy will be at this stage. It's just that you don't know it. Han Fei was shocked. This was the first time he had heard the old tortoise say this. Han Fei couldn't help asking, So, in fact, as long as I improve the degree of disassembling spiritual energy, not only can I improve the use of power, but it is also a way to polish my foundation? The old tortoise hummed. Of course. If you have a deep enough mastery of spiritual energy, as long as you wash your body with the disassembled spiritual energy, the so-called foundation will be quickly polished. F***ck, why didn't you tell me earlier? The old tortoise said leisurely, Even if I told you earlier, it's useless. After all, disassembling spiritual energy takes time, and the further you go, the more difficult it will be. If it took a lot of time to comprehend, then it would be better to train and gain experience. Your progress is already very, very fast. In fact, you don't need to rely on this way to improve yourself. But since you asked if you really want to take a shortcut, this is a good way. Han Fei thought, Disassembling spiritual energy again? I can give it a try. My other methods seem to be stuck. This is the only way I can make progress. Han Fei couldn't help asking, What about the golden body? The old tortoise said lightly, Although the energy here is terrifying, it is not fierce or pure enough. If you want to use the energy here to reach the phenomenal success level of the golden body, you have to find a way to gather the spiritual energy here. Otherwise, if you just rely on swallowing and breaking through bit by bit, your progress will be extremely slow. Hearing what the old tortoise said, Han Fei immediately understood. Sure enough, having an old man at home is like having a treasure. This old tortoise, as an omnipotent encyclopedia, could help him avoid taking detours most of the time. Just this point alone made his cultivation speed several times faster than others. Han Fei was also very straightforward. Since he only had these 3 ways to go at present, and the first 2 were blocked, no matter whether the third way worked or not, he had to give it a try. The significance of disassembling spiritual energy was huge. Han Fei had known this for a long time. He was much stronger than others, to a large extent, because he had a deeper understanding of disassembling spiritual energy than others. When Han Fei extracted a bit of spiritual energy again, the flame in Han Fei's hand was peeled off at an extremely fast speed. In a moment, when the bit of spiritual energy shrank by more than half, it finally became unstable and annihilated into a ball of water. 62%. Han Fei frowned slightly. 70% was the basic requirement for becoming a venerable. Initially, when he was discussing the method of disassembling spiritual energy with the Worm King, he had sworn that it was not difficult to achieve 70%. The old tortoise also said that 70% was not difficult for him. But although he had slacked off during this period of time, 62% was really not much. After all, after the Insect King told him about this method, in the first month, he soon increased the disassembling spiritual energy to 58%. Later, it took him more than a year, but now he only improved by 4%. Han Fei now had a deeper understanding of the so-called 62%. In the past, when Shu Shan was still here, his understanding of disassembling spiritual energy was to disassemble 1 point of spiritual energy into 2 points. In this way, his power could be doubled. Later, when his disassembling spiritual energy reached 50%, Shu Shan only said, "Continue to disassemble spiritual energy when you are an explorer." He didn't say much about other things. Now, Han Fei suddenly began to wonder if 1 point of spiritual energy could really be disassembled into 2 points. In the past, he had this suspicion. Disassembling 1 point of spiritual energy into 2 points. According to the conservation of energy, then in essence, wasn't it still 1 point? Shu Shan said, "That's because no one can fully exert the full power contained in spiritual energy." When he really disassembled 1 point of spiritual energy into 2 points, he didn't need to use his brain to understand it, but just used it to detonate the power of spiritual energy. Then, the result was probably more than twice less than 1.5 times the power. In fact, after in-depth understanding with the Insect King and the Old Tortoise, Han Fei knew that the truth of disassembling spiritual energy was not like this. In their words, spiritual energy was a kind of energy. In spiritual energy there was a certain kind of law. This kind of law hadn't been understood. However, this kind of law was the source of the power that spiritual energy could exert. Han Fei once wondered if, in the end, the disassembling of spiritual energy was really to disassemble the last few % of the source of power? That is, the power of the Great Path? But the Old Tortoise said, "No one can do it 100%. If the spiritual energy was disassembled to 100%, there would be nothing left." What did that mean? Perhaps, in the deepest part of spiritual energy, there might not be the so-called power of the Great Path? It was not as simple as a flower having stamens and a fruit having a core. The power of the Great Path that drove the spiritual energy and burst out the power was actually completely integrated into the spiritual energy. When he disassembled spiritual energy, in fact, he just separated this kind of power of the Great Path. In fact, it was just that the amount of spiritual energy had increased. In the quantity of each grain, the power that burst out of the spiritual energy was different. If the spiritual energy was disassembled to 50%, then the power that burst out of the disassembled spiritual energy would naturally be the same. But because the quantitative change led to a qualitative change, the amount of spiritual energy increased, and the destructive power it could cause doubled. Therefore, everyone thought that if the spiritual energy was disassembled to 50%, the strength would increase by 2 times. But in fact, if 1 point of spiritual energy became 2 points, it wouldn't increase the strength by 2 times, only about 1.5 times. Most people wouldn't investigate the root of the problem, and they didn't have the ability to investigate it. Besides, there was a premise here: ordinary people couldn't exert the full power of every bit of spiritual energy at all. This meant that it was possible that the so-called 1.5 times increase in strength that they saw with their own eyes was actually fake. Second, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1383. Wrong thinking. The old turtle asked, What? What idea is wrong? Han Fei was startled by his own idea. However, he then thought, if I can think of it, then the strong masters like the old turtle must have thought of it too, so why didn't they tell me? Is it because the old turtle and the insect king didn't want to tell me? If the old turtle thought so, it was reasonable. However, the insect king didn't tell him this at the beginning. It seemed that he didn't realize this at all. Or did the insect king not think about this problem at all? However, Han Fei felt that the strong masters at their level couldn't make any progress in their strength for thousands of years. They had nothing to do for hundreds of thousands of years, and could only think about these problems. How could they not think of it? Ignoring the old turtle, 100 points of spiritual energy suddenly appeared in Han Fei's hand. Disassembling 50% of the spiritual energy, he blasted out the 2 points of spiritual energy at once. As a result, a 1.6-meter mark was blasted out in the water. Seeing this scene, Han Fei blasted out the 2 points of spiritual energy that he had disassembled with 62% of the spiritual energy. The result surprised Han Fei. The mark blasted out in the water was only less than 2 inches longer. No. Han Fei immediately shook his head. After all, he didn't understand the power of the Great Way contained in the spiritual energy. He didn't know how much it could improve his strength. When he disassembled it, how much of the power of the Great Way was divided? He didn't know. Obviously, the disassembling degree was 12% different, but the power that erupted was not very different. Could it be that the more he disassembled the spiritual energy, the less benefit he would get? This should be what most people felt. Therefore, the disassembling of spiritual energy became more and more difficult. In fact, the difference between 50% and 80% was not very big. Some people could make do with it and could accept it. However, Han Fei didn't think he could. In any case, he had to know the internal mechanism and the internal reason, right? Otherwise, he would always be unwilling. There seemed to be a big problem in this. Han Fei couldn't help saying, Old Yuan, you said that there is a trace of the power of the Great Way in the spiritual energy. This power of the Great Way can at most make 1 point of spiritual energy stronger than in the normal state? The old turtle suddenly exclaimed in surprise, You found out? You only used half an incense stick's time to discover the problem? Han Fei was dumbfounded. You know what I found? The old turtle was a little surprised. Of course it's because you discovered the power contained in spiritual energy. Due to the difference in individual strength and mastery, the power they could display was also different. Even if there are people in the same realm as you who can disassemble spiritual chi to the same degree, the power you can exert is actually different. Han Fei frowned. So, because everyone who uses spiritual energy is a variable, the final power obtained after spiritual energy is disassembled is different? Old turtle, that's right. Actually, this shouldn't be something you need to consider. Why did you suddenly comprehend this now? Han Fei really wanted to roll his eyes at the old turtle. Do I need to be enlightened? There must be a difference between a shoddy product and a high-quality imitation. Since the disassembly of spiritual energy is a standard to measure whether a person can become a venerable or a king, I have to be clear about this thing. Otherwise, even when I disassembled 50% and 60%, the result of the explosive power was obviously wrong. Would I still have to lie to myself with the boolsh asterisk t of, the more I disassemble, the harder it will be, and the smaller the improvement will be? Am I still a new human being? Han Fei immediately asked. Just tell me about yourself. How strong can one point of spiritual energy be if I am used as a test? The old turtle thought for a moment and said, Then I may be a little scared if I tell you. Han Fei curled his lips and said, I'm not scared. Tell me, when you were with me, what was the rate at which you used spiritual energy to disassemble? How much of my ordinary point of spiritual energy could you exert? The old turtle said leisurely, When I was an explorer, I could probably exert about 1/8 times of your point of spiritual energy. Han Fei's lips twitched. What about the venerable realm? The old turtle said leisurely, In the venerable realm, in the peak state it was about 3/6 times. Hiss, f*ck, I'm not an educated person. Don't lie to me. Are you sure you're using spiritual energy? Did he use that chaos chi or something? The old turtle sneered. He lie to you? Do I have to lie to you? Not that I'm bragging, but I've never seen anyone who can exert more than 4 times the power of a point of spiritual energy. If I hadn't been unlucky, I would have been an emperor by now. Han Fei thought to himself, Do you think I'm going to believe you? Theoretically, other people can only get twice the spiritual energy by disassembling spiritual energy. But you almost made me 4 times of it, Han Fei said angrily. So you disassembled 1 point of spiritual energy into 4 points of spiritual energy. The old turtle said disdainfully, Don't be sarcastic. At that time, you will find that the power contained in 1 point of spiritual energy is actually beyond your imagination. When you completely disassemble 1 point of spiritual energy into 2 points, you may find that the power of the great path contained in the spiritual energy still has room to be excavated. Han Fei said with a dumbfounded look, It means that the energy of spiritual energy is not enough to be divided into 2 parts. The power of the great path in the spiritual energy can still be excavated? The old turtle said, That's why I said, How did you realize this problem now? In the early stage of disassembling spiritual energy, because the gap is not big, there is not much difference before the venerable realm. The origin of power you are pursuing is something that only the venerable realm will consider. You have a very long time to think about this matter. Han Fei immediately said angrily, You just told me that I can improve my strength by improving the speed of disassembling spiritual energy. If the gap is not big before, then what's the point of improving the speed of disassembling spiritual energy? Besides, everything has its origin. That's the right way. The old turtle said indifferently, You said the origin. The origin is the most difficult thing to understand. Besides, although I said it's almost the same, the effect it actually shows is not the same. Don't blame me. You can try to understand it. If you can exert the power that I had in the past, then the improvement will be great. The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. In fact, it was just a conjecture about the disassembling of spiritual energy. But knowing that it was a conjecture, the disassembling itself was a boring process, so he had to continue. The time was too short, and Han Fei didn't have the energy to disassemble the spiritual energy bit by bit. He gave himself 3 days. If he couldn't come up with a good solution within 3 days, then he would continue. The first day, Han Fei tried to use his own great path to permeate the spiritual energy, which was the great path infiltration method that the insect king mentioned. According to his own idea, the great path and the heavenly path were both Taos anyway. What if he integrated them? As a result, after experimenting for a day and a night, Han Fei even imagined that he could disassemble spiritual energy to 4 times the power, but it didn't work. Under the Great Path infiltration method, the utilization rate of 1 point of spiritual energy was far lower than that of his own forging and disassembling method. Thinking about it, Han Fei felt that it might be because his forging skill was too low. Ever since he entered the reincarnation realm, entered the 100,000 mountains, and learned the 100 Wars divine hammer, he rarely refined with normal methods. Therefore, Han Fei deduced the spiritual fire variation by the way. All things solution, heaven level, divine quality. Note: this is a method to melt all things. It can derive all kinds of fire and try to strip the origin of all things, get rid of the impurities, and extract the essence to make the origin of all things purer. It can have different effects in the hands of different people. Deduced art, dissociative fire completion. 0/100 million. Otherwise, why would the demon purification pot be so amazing? This move was indeed useful. All things solution was more advanced than the spiritual fire variation. At the same time, the refining technique seemed to be able to use the power of the great path in the spiritual energy. As a result, Han Fei's progress reached 65%. After a day, Han Fei saw that the progress was still stuck at 65%. Han Fei thought that all things solution was just a name, but it couldn't really solve all things. So, he deduced the dissociative fire. Dissociative fire, venerable level, mid-quality. Note: this is a method to melt all things. It can derive all kinds of fire and try to strip the origin of all things, getting rid of the impurities and extracting the essence. With the dissociative fire, it can dissociate the origin of matter and extract its essence. It can have different effects in the hands of different people. Deduced art, dissociative fire completion. 0/1 billion. Seeing this, Han Fei found that the so-called dissociative fire had returned to the pure refining technique. He was able to analyze the most essential substance from the material. He tried it himself and found that the so-called dissociative fire could only increase the progress by 1% during this period. For a moment, Han Fei felt quite embarrassed. It seemed that the refining technique was not the most important thing. The most important thing was the specific effect of the refining technique. For example, the so-called dissociative fire was more like a refining technique that directly turned into a kind of fire. And he had no need for fire now. In this vast water realm, what else could fire be used for except refining? If it was for refining, he didn't lack weapons at all with the sea-quelling bizarre treasure. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Han Fei's real progress was 4%. The old turtle was startled by the speed of his progress. He thought to himself, if I let him go on like this, in another month or so, won't I have to disassemble the spiritual chi of the venerable realm for him in advance? In addition to this, the old turtle found that every time Han Fei consumed spiritual energy, he would gain a new ability. Suddenly, the old turtle felt that he had discovered something. Han Fei is actually exchanging combat skills with the little calabash? The old turtle couldn't help but be shocked. What the hell is this calabash? Can it exchange cultivation methods and combat skills for Han Fei endlessly? Unfortunately, the old turtle couldn't understand it after all. In the past 3 days, Han Fei improved the progress of his spiritual energy disassembling a little. In fact, his adaptability to the king's coercion had also increased a lot. After all, he was not an ordinary cultivator. When his strength increased by 2 small levels, his spiritual energy disassembling went further, and his foundation was polished to a higher level. Han Fei slowly sank. In fact, this layer of green mist was not deep. It was only a mere 100 meters deep. When Han Fei really crossed this 100 meters, his whole body was cracked and his 7 apertures were bleeding. Every once in a while, he would cast a holy light technique on himself. At this moment, Han Fei's eyes widened. He saw that deep at the bottom of this cave, there was a huge whale with a broken body. And this big whale shocked Han Fei. Is this a cloud whale? The 3rd chapter. Yesterday and today I was laying the groundwork because these things have to be written eventually. If I don't write them, some settings can't continue. It's over today, and there won't be any tomorrow. Well, end of this chapter. Chapter 1384. Han Fei's first reaction was shock. Because in a sense, the cloud whale shouldn't be a sea monster. Han Fei had always thought that the cloud whale was the only one in this world, the loneliest and most peculiar whale in the world. But now it seemed that this was not the case at all. Han Fei had never asked when the cloud whale appeared on the Scattered Stars Island. Why were they saved by others and why were they living together? Huh! The old turtle couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. I seem to have seen this whale wandering in the sky outside your island. Han Fei's mind was racing. The Inyang heaven was almost the same as the Waterwood heaven. They were both blocked by the wall of death. The strength of the cloud whale on the Scattered Stars Island was actually not very strong. Although it ate a lot, it didn't grow any stronger. Because it didn't like to stay at low altitudes, it would occasionally pick up humans at low altitudes except when it was on the Scattered Stars Island. Other times, it was shuttling through the clouds in the sky. Han Fei couldn't help wondering, isn't a whale a viviparous animal? Could it be that the cloud whale outside is this creature's baby? But Han Fei thought about it and felt that it was wrong. This cloud whale had been dead for a long time. Where the F***ck did this baby come from? Immediately, Han Fei didn't dive down at all but sat cross-legged in the water, focusing his attention on the black mist. The Gemini divine technique was interlinked. The black mist hiding in the old turtle's body asked casually, "Senior, let me ask you something. Do you know when the cloud whale on the Scattered Stars Island appeared? When I came back, I met the cloud whale and found that it had just entered the sea demon realm. After eating so many things, its strength didn't improve at all?" The star turtle couldn't help but wonder, why do you ask this? Is the being down there related to the cloud whale? Han Fei thought to himself, do you have to be so sensitive? And you've been suppressed here for so long. Don't you know what's down there? However, Han Fei didn't disclose it but said bluntly, of course it has nothing to do with what's down there. It's not a matter of the same era. It's just that it's quite boring to stay here. It's good for us to chat. After all, the species of the cloud whale is rather special. Why do you think its ancestors passed down one kind of creature to the only one? Hearing this, the star tortoise couldn't help but say, me? I'm not sure about the little cloud whale's ancestors. Come to think of it, it should be because of different living habits. After all, fish should live in the water. Why are they living in the sky? Han Fei pretended to be surprised. The cloud whale really has an ancestor? The star tortoise said, I don't know, because I've been here for tens of thousands of years. However, the little cloud whale was indeed a rare creature. That was more than 1,800 years ago. At that time, I was undergoing my tribulation and broke through to the explorer realm of you humans. At that time, during the heavenly tribulation, the commander at that time caught the little cloud whale out of nowhere and said that he wanted to see how much of the dissipating heavenly tribulation power the little cloud whale could absorb. I want to keep it here. Han Fei was stunned. More than 1,800 years ago? Han Fei immediately said, why do I vaguely remember that it was only 800 years before the cloud whale appeared in the sight of human beings? The star tortoise said, that's right. At that time, the little cloud whale was too young and weak, so it was raised by Tang Bingyao as a pet. After 1,000 years, it finally returned to the Scattered Stars Island. However, the little cloud whale's talent might not be very good. After 1,000 years, it hasn't even reached the sea demon realm, and it's still a demon. Today, after another 800 years, the little cloud whale is still in the sea demon realm. Han Fei's lips twitched. The cloud whale was a legendary creature. It didn't make sense for it to grow up so slowly, did it? He was a little curious at the beginning, but he wasn't too curious at that time. But now, Han Fei felt that there must be a big secret behind it. Suddenly, Han Fei realized that there was another person involved in this matter, and that was the commander at that time. Han Fei asked, Senior, is the commander still alive? Who is he? The star tortoise said without hesitation, Tang Bingyao. His full name is Tang Yen, and he's quite a gentle person. He's really talented. However, not long after I made the breakthrough, Tang Bingyao left and never came back. Tang Yen? Wow, Han Fei was shocked. Li Daxian and Tang Yen, these two were both people who dominated the Ideal Palace rankings. Sometimes Li Daxian ranked first on the Void Steel. Sometimes Tang Yen ranked first. He couldn't say for sure who was stronger between the two. However, the Thousand-Star City didn't seem to know much about Li Daxian and Tang Yen, and no one could find out their origins. This should also have something to do with the memory loss in the Ideal Palace. However, Li Daxian's identity had been revealed. He was the patriarch of the Thug Academy, the fake Uncle Faceless. He was the patriarch of the Thug Academy, the legendary patriarch of the Thousand-Star City. The world only knew his power, but not his name. Who could call him a patriarch? Li Tianshan had such an identity. Then, was Tang Yan's identity really just a commander? Was it so simple? When the Star Tortoise underwent the tribulation, Tang Yen took the little cloud whale to absorb the power of the lightning tribulation. Then, not long after, Tang Yen left. After 1,000 years, the cloud whale came back? It seemed to be a simple thing, but every step felt wrong. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Senior, didn't that Commander Tang Yen tell you about the origin of the cloud whale?" The Star Tortoise couldn't help but say, "He didn't have time to talk about this. At that time, when I was undergoing the tribulation, the earth shook, and the Empyrean waterfall collapsed. It was very dangerous. I didn't have time to chat with Tang Bingyao. Later, after the tribulation, I was weak, so I fell into a deep sleep. The reason why the Empyrean waterfall you see now has such a huge waterfall is that it was moved here later." Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. There was definitely something wrong with Tang Yen. The Star Tortoise said that during the tribulation, even the Empyrean waterfall collapsed. At that time, the little cloud whale was just brought here. Then, it left for 1,000 years. Was this a coincidence? No. Naturally, Han Fei didn't believe that it was a coincidence. It was just the most basic clue. Not just him. Even if a random person came here and saw the corpse of a cloud whale hidden under the king's pressure, they would definitely have the same reaction as him. To learn more about the cloud whale, there was a living cloud whale outside his island. Only with a living one would it be easy to trace it back. Han Fei rolled his eyes. "By the way, Senior, is the king's corpse down there really a corpse? Is it possible that it's still alive? I feel that the pressure down there is too strong. I can't stand it." The Star Tortoise didn't know what was going on down there. When Han Fei asked, it answered, "Because it couldn't be more familiar with the pressure. If it weren't for the pressure of the king's corpse, the power of his soul would have penetrated it." The Star Tortoise said firmly, "It's definitely dead. It's definitely dead. That's the corpse of a king. If it's half dead, it's very easy for it to absorb my vitality. How can I suppress it until now?" Han Fei thought to himself, "It seems that the Star Tortoise doesn't know what happened down there. What happened up there is Tang Yan's business. If he asked the Star Tortoise about this, he might get some information, but not all of it. On the Scattered Stars Island, there should be records of the previous commanders. After all, there was a flowing line of soldiers and an iron marshal. Not a single person at the level of a commander would be a simple character. How could he not have any records or something?" Han Fei didn't ask any more questions. If he had any questions, he just needed to keep them in mind. When he was free, he would check them. Han Fei sighed casually, changed the topic, and chatted with the Star Tortoise about spiritual energy dismantling. After all, the Star Tortoise's spiritual energy dismantling rate must have reached 70%. It wouldn't be bad if he learned it himself, right? Under the king's pressure, the real size of this sky was actually much larger than it looked from the outside. The barrier formed by the so-called king's pressure was more like a seal that isolated the two sides. This world was like a complete burial ground for corpses. Compared with the outside, the demonic chi here was more violent. However, for Han Fei's spiritual heritage that was beyond mortal heritage, the demonic chi couldn't do anything to him at all. This cloud whale's body was huge. It was 30,000 meters long, and it might even be longer than that. Han Fei smiled self-deprecatingly. He didn't believe it before, but his horizons were slowly broadened. The enormous dragons and the cloud whale, as long as 10,000 meters, had already told him that there were many such terrifying monsters outside. Just get used to it. Different from the floor covered with ultra-quality demonic stones just now, there were many rare spiritual plants around the cloud whale's body. There were more than 1,000 of them, big and small. In addition, this king's body seemed to be protected by an invisible energy. Han Fei was proficient in arrays, but he couldn't tell what kind of array it was. However, sensing the pressure around him, Han Fei didn't feel that it was very strong. It seemed to be even weaker than in the blue mist. Besides, the giant corpse was right in front of him, waiting for him to enjoy it. However, Han Fei had never used a king's corpse before. Han Fei immediately said, "Old Yuan, what do you think this corpse is used for? To peel off its skin, pull out its tendons, cut off its flesh, and take its bones?" The old turtle couldn't help but say in disgust, "Do you have to be so cruel?" Han Fei said helplessly, "I'm just asking." The old turtle said unhurriedly, "I'm afraid this corpse won't be useful to you." The old turtle said, "The so-called king is called the Sea Expansion Realm. You humans call it the Sea Expansion Realm, and the sea demons call it the Deep Sea Giant Demon. Sea Expansion Realm is to create your own ocean. This is an independent space. Although this king died, it doesn't mean that the world he created will also perish. Do you understand what I mean?" The king's portable space? Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. "I never thought about taking the king's wealth. If this cloud whale's body does exist, what treasures will there be?" Chapter 1385. Hearing what the old turtle said, Han Fei was tempted. How much wealth would a king have? Sea expansion was to open up a unique ocean world. Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei was quite curious. He didn't know what Forge the Universe was like. Han Fei had seen a small world. However, this didn't surprise him. After all, the sea-swallowing seashell and the sun-moon shell could both form their own spaces. Was the sea-swallowing seashell also the space of a king? In that case there would be countless kings. As if knowing what Han Fei was thinking, the old turtle said contemptuously, "The sea-swallowing seashell, the sun-moon shell, and the star shell are just their own characteristics. They collapse a space at the cost of their death. The size of the space is related to their strength when they were alive. Do you know where the masters of spirit weapons and divine weapons go?" Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Where?" Han Fei had thought about this question before. If he hadn't known about the Soul Sea, Han Fei felt that he wouldn't even know where his naturally endowed spiritual beasts and contractual spiritual beasts went. Even the living places of contractual spiritual beasts were different from those of naturally endowed spiritual beasts. They didn't seem to be in the Soul Sea. The old turtle said, "Since you have even encountered the remains of a king today, I can tell you in advance. In fact, all creatures have a sea, and this sea can only be opened by the Sea Expansion Realm. However, this doesn't mean that you can't use this sea without the Sea Expansion Realm. For example, if you refine spiritual weapons and spiritual weapons with your essence blood, then the spiritual weapons and spiritual weapons will be stained with your origin, so you can naturally store them in that sea." Han Fei took a breath. "Where is the sea?" The old turtle said, "It's still in the chaos. You can also call it the Chaos Sea. I didn't make up this name. This is the guess of many strong masters. It's just that no one can really find the Chaos Sea." Han Fei nodded and thought to himself, "It's all a guess. What's there to say?" Han Fei said, "I just want to know, where is the Sea Expansion Realm of this cloud whale?" The old turtle immediately said, "If I'm not mistaken, It should be in his remaining demonic essence. Han Fei was stunned for a moment. Demonic essence? Han Fei immediately lowered his head and looked at his abdomen. The one in my dantian? The old turtle pondered for a moment. At first, I was also rather surprised by the demonic essence in your body. However, the demonic energy in your body seems to have been sealed by some sort of power. Why, you don't know. Han Fei had never mentioned this to the old turtle. It was given to him by the snow god's palace master, Bingxue Chuling. But up to now, Han Fei hadn't found any effect of the demonic essence. Other than giving him some help when he was cultivating the Yao transformation art, it had not been of any use after that. At this moment, after hearing what the old turtle said, Han Fei suddenly realized that this was a world left by a king. He didn't study how to break the invisible energy on the surface of the cloud whale's body. On the contrary, Han Fei tried to dig up all the flowers and grass around the cloud whale. All of the spirit fruits that could grow near the remains of a king were extraordinary, and they were all supreme grade. Furthermore, perhaps it was because the remnant of a king possessed boundless energy, but all of the spirit fruits here were energy fruits. There was not a single spirit fruit or poison fruit. Hiss! 7-color fiery lotus? Han Fei randomly dug up a spiritual plant, and information popped up in front of his eyes, which gave him a fright. Named 7-color fiery lotus introduction, it grows in a place of boundless energy and is generally the place where powerful creatures have died. It grows by absorbing their vitality and energy. It has the magical effect of improving physique and increasing energy. Level Heaven Level Quality Ultra Quality contains spiritual energy 646,000 points. Effect: if eaten directly, it can improve physique, cleanse the muscles and marrow, enhance vitality, and contain spiritual energy. It can be eaten repeatedly. Han Fei just glanced at a random one. Any random one here was a heaven-level ultra quality. It was not weak at all. However, there were more than 1,000 spiritual fruits here. Han Fei was overjoyed. With these energy fruits, it's almost certain that I'll have a golden body. Han Fei hurriedly threw the 7-color fiery lotus into Forge the Universe. Then, under the terrifying pressure, he buried his head in digging. 1, 2, 3. After digging dozens of spiritual fruits in a row, suddenly, when Han Fei was digging a purple leaf fruit, all of a sudden, a gray shadow emerged from the cloud whale's body and swept at Han Fei casually. Han Fei reacted very quickly. The moment he retreated, the embroidery needle was already in front of him. A wisp of gray, mist-like gas came crashing over. Clang! Chi! Chi! Han Fei retreated 7 or 8 meters and looked down at his chest, where there was a burn more than 3 inches wide, and his skin was wrinkled. The old turtle said, "It's okay. When you dug the grass, the protective energy on the surface of its body was affected, and a little of it leaked out." Han Fei's face changed slightly. "It has been dead for so long, but this little power can hurt me?" The old turtle said, "I told you, don't guess the strength of a king. You seem to be extremely strong now, and you seem to be able to fight a beginner venerable. But, so what? If you keep going forward, you will still be an ant. Even this broken body of a king is not something you can touch easily." Han Fei didn't refute. With a dark face, he carefully collected these spiritual fruits and spiritual plant. Only when he was stronger could he find his weakness. It took Han Fei half a day to carefully collect all the spiritual fruits and spiritual plants around the cloud whale. Then he breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Although he was swept by the escaping protective energy a dozen times, that force was not enough to knock him back, let alone really hurt him. But that force was not enough to knock him back, let alone really hurt him. It could be said that Han Fei had gained too much this time. Spirit awakening fluid, ultra-quality demonic stones, energy fruits. These 3 things were already unimaginable for countless people. At least, with these energy fruits, Han Fei felt that his indestructible golden body was stable. He just needed to wait and give himself a little more time. By then, his indestructible golden body would be phenomenal, and he would become a peak-level explorer, and his strength would immediately have a qualitative leap. Han Fei was excited at this moment. Old Yuan, can I try to break this protective energy? You have absorbed so much chaotic energy. You must help me when necessary. The old turtle said, although this king has been dead for a long time, its protective energy is not something that ordinary people can break. To get its demonic essence, you have to break this protective energy first. Secondly, you have to prevent the king from playing tricks on its demonic essence. Han Fei said, although the pressure is heavy, it can't hurt me once I get used to it. After all, it is not a living creature. If I can't even resist it, why should I fight for opportunities? However, this protective energy, is it also a kind of energy? The old turtle couldn't help but ask, what do you want to do? Han Fei thought for a moment and looked at his arm, which had been burnt to a pulp just now. He grinned. You said that I have to gather the energy and wash it together in order to get enough violent power to polish my golden body? Look, isn't this? God is on my side? The old turtle was silent for a long time and finally said, if it's you, it may really work. After all, you know the spirit awakening technique. The old turtle didn't want to admit this fact. Han Fei's idea was very bold. Using the protective energy of the king to polish his golden body? What a huge amount of energy it was! It shouldn't be a problem for him to polish his golden body. Once his golden body was formed, Han Fei's physical strength would definitely soar. Han Fei took a breath and thought to himself, sure enough, he who strikes first has the upper hand. What others can't touch doesn't mean Han Fei can't touch. Since you all choose me, I'll show you how strong I am. Then Han Fei opened his mouth and inhaled. The art of swallowing directly absorbed the energy from all directions into his body. As a unique technique left by the war giants, the art of swallowing was very likely to be listed as a secret by the Chow family of the Thousand-Star City. At this moment, Han Fei took this opportunity to suck out the protective energy on the surface of the huge cloud whale's body, and like a spiral tornado, it covered his whole body. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In just an instant, Han Fei's skin quickly turned red, then wrinkled, torn, and melted. The terrifying and scorching power, which seemed to contain a trace of the cloud whale's blood, penetrated into Han Fei's flesh and blood, and penetrated into Han Fei's brain. Ho! At that moment, Han Fei felt as if his brain had been poured into boiling lava. He was about to explode. Swish! The heavenly awakening technique arrived. Although this scorching energy was not like the dragon origin chi, it was still extremely domineering. Otherwise, Han Fei wouldn't have used the heavenly awakening technique to protect himself. In this case, the holy light technique couldn't keep up with the damage to Han Fei's flesh and internal organs at all. At this moment, when Han Fei swallowed the energy, he felt as if his internal organs were burning, which was more painful than any time before. As for why Han Fei could still take it, that was because of the invincible will. Han Fei was so furious that his hair stood on end. This time, he had to condense a golden body no matter what, so that he wouldn't have to suffer this inhuman pain in the future. Chilla, Han Fei's flesh cracked, blurred, melted, and disintegrated again and again. The vitality generated by the indestructible body could no longer meet Han Fei's need. If he didn't use the heavenly awakening technique, Han Fei felt that he would probably be burnt into a skeleton, or maybe only a golden skeleton would be left. Once, twice. In the outside world, on the scattered stars island, in front of the ancient battlefield, all the venerables looked at the Empyrean waterfall. At the same time, on an unknown sea where the 10,000 Demon Valley was, one venerable after another appeared. Huh? Can't the scattered stars island suppress it anymore? In the 10,000 Demon Valley, a sea demon venerable roared, Blue Feather, I'm told that the pearls produced in the Sea of Pearls are extremely important wealth for human society. I order you to lead 10,000 elite soldiers and 100,000 manfish to destroy that place. Chapter 1386. Han Fei felt that magma had been poured into his head. Oh no. His flesh and blood had turned into magma, the terrifying energy was washing his body crazily. If Ren Tianfen were here, he would have been dumbfounded. Before reaching the venerable level, you can at most cultivate half a golden body, which is already very rare. Why? Do you still have the confidence to cultivate the indestructible body to great success? Han Fei really didn't want to feel the feeling of burning his bones and shattering his bones into fine sand again. At this moment, the protective energy of the entire cloud whale had been reduced by half, and it was fading and flowing into Han Fei's body. As for Han Fei himself, although he had the apocalyptic divine technique, his golden body was half exposed at this moment. However, right now, his golden body was half exposed. On top of his head, his skull was golden, resplendent and dazzling. The golden body seemed to have been formed, but Han Fei's flesh and blood seemed to be unable to bear the power of the golden body. Every time it healed, it would rot and collapse again. After experiencing inhuman pain, Han Fei had slowly woken up at this moment and realized the seriousness of the problem. His golden body had been formed, and his meridians were as clean as glass and intact, but his flesh and blood were a bit weak. It seemed that his bones and meridians couldn't bear it. The old turtle roared, "You can't stop now. Your golden body has been formed, but the power of your flesh and blood can't match your bones and meridians, so your body has been collapsing and peeling off." Han Fei had no time to listen to the old turtle, because he found that the Gemini divine technique couldn't bear it anymore. The impact was too strong, and the Gemini divine technique wasn't a real external incarnation. So, at this moment, he was about to collapse. Han Fei gritted his teeth. He couldn't leave this place at this moment. Even if he had thousands of ultra-quality energy fruits, if he refined his golden body in the Empyrean waterfall, he would be surrounded by a dozen venerables, half of whom were enemies. For that reason alone, he couldn't go out. Inside the 1,000-mark star turtle, the black fog shivered. The star turtle asked, "What's wrong with you?" Han Fei said, "No, the other half of my body is in danger down there. I have to return to the original body." The star turtle said in surprise, "If you completely go in, you can't come out. But it doesn't matter. It's only a few months anyway, as long as you don't die." "I won't die." Han Fei thought to himself, that's the only way. Although he had an agreement with Shueishenqi, he was indeed in big trouble at the moment. Perhaps his complete body would be able to withstand the situation of his flesh and blood collapsing. After a while, the body of black fog entered without hesitation. Although Han Fei's soul was in great pain, he still maintained a trace of sobriety. If something went wrong with him this time, not to mention becoming a king, even living would be an extravagant hope. Now that such a huge commotion had occurred in the remains of the cloud whale, the outside world must be in chaos. He wondered if the sea demons had taken any action. There must be. However, Han Fei couldn't provide any help to the outside world now. Woo! I can use Goldie. I can pass a message to Goldie through the old turtle. This way, I can also know the situation outside. If the sea demons come to snatch the cloud whale, perhaps I can hide under the star tortoise and ambush them. In a daze, Han Fei thought of a lot of things. Swish, a moment later, the body of the black fog rushed over, and the Gemini divine arts were instantly lifted. 1 breath, 2 breath, 3 breath. Phew, Han Fei had just breathed a sigh of relief, and the power of the collapse of his body seemed to be getting better. Han Fei clearly felt that his strength seemed to be transitioning and merging. However, just after 3 breath, Poochie, his flesh and blood collapsed again. Han Fei's body still couldn't support the terrifying muscles and bones. F***ck. Is there no end to this? The old turtle said, "Your problem is not that you have two bodies. The foundation of your body is the same, so even if your other half returns, it will only completely stabilize the golden body. Your fleshly body will also collapse." F***ck, why didn't you say so earlier? Han Fei said helplessly, "Old Yuan, did you deliberately set me up?" The old turtle said, "But if your other half doesn't come, your golden body will not be complete and will only accelerate the collapse of your flesh and blood. At least your golden body is stabilized. With the golden body, even if your flesh and blood are gone, you can actually live." Han Fei thought the old turtle was talking about the undead creature. Because during the Waterwood Heavenly Island battle, he had fought with the golden skeleton. If that wasn't an undying creature, then what was it? And the thug patriarch Li Daxian. As soon as he made his move, white skeletons blotted out the sky. It was as if a great devil had appeared out of nowhere. He didn't want to become like that. Han Fei asked, "Is there no other way?" The old turtle said leisurely, "I'm afraid you can only continue to cultivate and let this energy continue to wash your body and polish your flesh and blood strength. Of course, this may consume your vitality. I'm afraid it will take at least 2,000 years. Han Fei, puff! Han Fei was infuriated by the old turtle's words and blood spurted out all over his body. F***ck, I just replenished my vitality not long ago. In order to break through to the peak of the golden body, I consumed at least another 200 years of vitality. But now you're asking me for 2,000 years of vitality? Are you kidding me? Roar. My body can contain all rivers." Han Fei activated the Tao seed and imagined that his body was invincible, trying to forcibly contain the muscles and bones. Sure enough, as soon as this technique was used, Han Fei's flesh and blood no longer collapsed. Although his body was full of cracks and the violent protective energy was still washing his body, it didn't disperse his flesh and blood. Phew, Han Fei let out a long sigh of relief. Sure enough, my Tao is awesome. With just a thought, I actually stopped the crisis of flesh and blood collapse. Huh! The old turtle couldn't help but be surprised. Are you forcibly condensing your body with your Tao? That's interesting. Although this technique doesn't last long, I'm afraid there are few people in the world who can do this with their Tao alone. Han Fei said angrily, "Heh. If you don't have an idea, you'd better shut up." Of course, Han Fei knew that this kind of fictitious power could only last for a limited time. If he wanted his flesh and blood to completely wrap his muscles and bones, it would probably take a long time to polish them. Han Fei thought, if only this Tao could always be integrated into my flesh and blood. With this idea, Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Old Yuan, can the Tao and flesh and blood be integrated?" The old turtle didn't even think about it and immediately said, "Of course it can. For example, the body of this cloud whale is surrounded by mist, which is the result of the dissipation of the Tao. Otherwise, do you think the pure coercion of a king can suppress you?" Han Fei was overjoyed and was about to continue to ask, but he heard the old turtle continue to say, "However, the integration of the Tao is something that can only be done in the Pioneer Sea state. You can't do it now. Your flesh and blood can't even support the golden body. How can you talk about the Tao? If the Tao is really integrated into your body, I'm afraid that your flesh and blood will immediately explode, your muscles and bones will collapse, and you will die." Hearing this, Han Fei's heart sank. If the Tao can't do it, what about the Tao? The old turtle was stunned by Han Fei's question. The Tao and the Tao naturally couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. The Tao was just a kind of understanding of the world and one's own talent at the sea spirit realm. It could be regarded as a transition to the Tao. But to integrate the Tao into one's flesh and blood? The old turtle had never thought about this problem. After all, there was no need to do this at all when one reached the king's realm. Although he wasn't clear, as a strong master, the old turtle had a rough evaluation in his heart. it is reasonable to say that it is possible. However, if the Tao is integrated into your body, the Tao will collapse. You have to devour this nomological law. A gleam of light flashed in Han Fei's eyes. At the beginning, the reason why he became the law enforcer was that he was walking on the road of body refining. With the 108 desolate God body, the indestructible body, and the law enforcer, there was only one word for him: hard. It turned out that he was indeed very hard. A pair of iron fists were invincible, and he walked freely in the 1,000-star city. At that time, he didn't know what law he should enforce. He just simply felt that he wanted to achieve the strongest body. Wasn't that the Vajra body? But now, the power of law enforcer seemed to have obviously deviated from his Tao. His Tao tended to create something out of nothing, but the power of law enforcer was the Vajra body. Thinking of this, Han Fei immediately shouted, "Glaring king!" However, there was the suppression of the remains of the king here. Although Han Fei's body emitted golden light, how could he use it? However, Han Fei didn't panic. The Tao was the Tao, a kind of rhythm between heaven and earth. This kind of Tao was created by him and integrated into his body. Couldn't he eat this wisp of Tao? At this moment, the Tao was suppressed in Han Fei's body and couldn't get out at all. Want to swallow it? That should be possible. However, how to swallow the Tao? Han Fei conveyed this thought to the old turtle. Now his body was almost out of control. Although he could see the power of the Tao, he didn't know how to swallow it. The old turtle said, "This requires your Tao heart to be strong. Break this Tao first, and then you can integrate it into your body." Hearing this, Han Fei pondered for a while and activated the Tao seed. Flesh and blood like worms, sacrifice the Tao, swallow. After all, Han Fei's flesh and blood could easily be separated from his bones. Although Han Fei hadn't done it before, Han Fei was confident that he could do it. Puff, puff, puff. In an instant, the surface of Han Fei's body collapsed, and his flesh and blood exploded everywhere. The half-golden body, with collapsed internal organs, stood in front of the giant cloud whale, still absorbing a huge amount of energy. Chomp, chomp! At that moment, Han Fei turned his body into a worm. His flesh and blood were shredding the golden light, and an extremely hard little golden man of laws was instantly torn to pieces under his own flesh and blood. And at this moment, under the collapse of his flesh and blood, Han Fei unexpectedly found three kinds of strange traces left. One was a black light, flashing in the flesh and blood. Han Fei had seen this black light more than once. It also appeared when he awakened his spirit, but then it appeared one after another and couldn't be found. Until now, Han Fei didn't know what it was. The other one turned out to be a small bottle. It didn't appear in his flesh and blood, but at the moment when the Tao collapsed just now, it seemed to fall out of a wisp of his soul. Hiss! Isn't this F***? When did a small bottle appear in his divine soul? The last one was a bead. Han Fei could recognize at a glance that it was the wind bead, the bead of the phantom glass wings. Although his body collapsed, Han Fei's golden body was still intact. He reached out and grabbed the small bottle. The moment Han Fei grabbed the small bottle, the scene in his soul suddenly changed, and he seemed to be in a dark void. A figure that Han Fei hadn't seen for a long time appeared. "Is that the Giant King?" Han Fei said in surprise. "Master?" Chapter 1387. The appearance of the Giant King was beyond Han Fei's expectation. What the F***ck, this is too horrifying. In this time after 100,000 years, next to the corpse of a strange cloud whale king, he saw the Giant King? But then, Han Fei realized that something was wrong. He had only discovered the Giant King when he held the small bottle. Could it be that the Giant King had hidden his soul in this small bottle? The Giant King said leisurely, "Disciple, I knew that one day you would discover the secret of the soul. It's ridiculous that the Beast King, the Heavenly Crystal, and the Water Fairy thought they could teach you a lesson. I'm different. I'm very smart. No matter what, I'm smarter than monkeys, birds, flowers, and plants. Han Fei was dumbfounded. With a thought, the apocalyptic divine technique descended. Han Fei's flesh and blood were recovering into a body, and the golden skeleton was also a body. At this time, the golden skeleton said, "Master, I'm confused. What's going on?" The old turtle said, "Idiot, it's just that someone left a soul mark in your soul. It doesn't have a mind of its own, and it can only repeat those words." Sure enough, the giant king laughed and said, "Little Wang Han, are you surprised to see me again? But don't get too excited. When you see me, I'm afraid I've turned into bones and dust. Who knows how many years later it will be? This is just a divine soul imprint that I left behind." Han Fei sighed faintly. "Damn, when did this happen? Why didn't I know?" The giant king hummed, "Make a long story short. Let me finish explaining things first. Little Wang Han, listen carefully. This half-bottle of blood is the real bloodline of the god of war, the blood of a god. It's a pity that I got a whole bottle of it back then. But after trying, I still couldn't walk on the path of the god of war and follow in the footsteps of the god of war. It's a pity. This should be because I'm not talented enough to absorb the bloodline of the god of war. Little Wang Han, I'll leave this half a bottle of blood of the god of war to you. You must help me find a decent inheritance. Or, if you can use it yourself, it's okay. This is the glory of the war god, it cannot be tarnished." The giant king used nearly 1,000 words to describe the greatness of the god of war, which made Han Fei's blood freeze. Who would have thought that this giant king was a die-hard fan of the god of war? Han Fei was speechless and complained crazily in his heart, "Master, don't you know that I'm also a body practitioner? You still want to leave the god's blood to others? I'm a little worried about your IQ." The old turtle was shocked. "Wait a minute. Kid, you crossed the river of time. What kind of master did you have? Why does it have the blood of the gods?" Han Fei said, "Maybe it was worshipped when the gods were still alive? At that time, it was popular to offer sacrifices." "Ridiculous." The old tortoise replied, "How could a dignified god give blood so easily?" Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei immediately remembered what the giant king said before. He said that if the war god was still safe and sound, the two of them could chat through the sacrificial firewall. Han Fei didn't know whether it was true or not. However, if the giant king said so, there might be some basis. Maybe the god of war was also a fool? In any case, the essence blood of the god of war had already fallen into his hands. This was the most awesome thing he had seen in his life, except for the little calabash. This was the real god's blood. After the giant king finished talking about business, he began to chat. He said, "Disciple, I don't know how many years you can go back in time. However, if you have a chance, you must take care of the war giant. Compared with the Beast Clan, the Sky Clan, and the Demonic Plant Clan, we have the least people. I heard that you little human beings are very fertile. Why can't we, who are a little bigger, have children? It's really strange." The giant king rambled. "I don't know what the future will be like. Our 100,000 mountains has a vast territory and many strong masters. There will always be some clansmen left, you know. Our war giants are not very smart, so you'll have to pay more attention in the future." The more the giant king chattered, the darker Han Fei's face became. Han Fei was helpless and thought, "Master, there may be traces of the Beast Clan and the Sky Clan. Master Shuaxian is still alive. I can't find anyone from your war giants at all." The giant king gradually disappeared in this kind of chatter. Turned out that a venerable was still a venerable. He didn't have the power of a king, so he could only leave a small movie for Han Fei. During the giant king's chatter, Han Fei's flesh and blood collapsed again, and the apocalyptic divine art came again. Of course, he couldn't go on like this. He had to solve this problem quickly. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Old Yuan, can I drink this god's blood?" The giant king said leisurely, "How would I know? I've never seen god's blood in my life. You're lucky to have someone hide the god's blood in your divine soul. Han Fei said, Then don't you have any suggestions? If I die, you will die. The old turtle said lazily, Of course, God's blood is good. But I'm afraid you can't bear it. However, I would like to ask, is your teacher also a king? Han Fei said, No. My teacher is a peak-level venerable. Otherwise, he would have lived to this day. The old turtle said bluntly, No. Han Fei asked, Huh? The old turtle said, If he is a venerable, why can he use the king's blood essence? Are you bragging? Even if he is a king, he doesn't dare to use God's blood easily, let alone a peak-level venerable. Han Fei was taken aback. What do you mean? The old turtle said, Well, your golden body has been formed. In terms of physique, I'm afraid you have also reached the level of a peak-level venerable. If your teacher can use it, you can naturally use it too. Maybe when the god bestowed the god's blood, he diluted it, or added some kind of restriction so that the god's blood won't hurt the venerable. However, to be safe, I think you should use a little bit first. Hearing this, Han Fei found it reasonable. Just when Han Fei was about to activate the god of war's blood essence, he heard the old turtle say, Why don't you melt your wings too? Anyway, these wings seem to only have the meaning of a secret method for you. After melting, these will not disappear, but will enhance a trace of bloodline power. In the future, if you give birth to children, they may inherit your bloodline power. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, Do you mean that what is in my bloodline, my children may inherit it? The old turtle nodded. That makes sense. The bloodline of every living being was actually quite heterogeneous. Maybe in each bloodline there are thousands of different kinds of power. Most of them are in a sealed state, and a few have already been awakened at the beginning of their birth. Han Fei blinked his eyes. The phantom glass wings are actually quite beautiful. The old turtle. Han Fei knew that the old turtle was right, because he was not the only one who had done this. In fact, many people had done this. Once they passed the level of law enforcer, they would melt their wings and become a part of their power. And Han Fei certainly didn't care about the power provided by the phantom glass wings. The phantom glass wings were best at speed and secret method. Even their flashing ability couldn't be compared with the agility of wind. This fusion was simple. With a thought from Han Fei, the wind god bead floated in the air. With a bang, it shattered into powder and was wrapped in a mist of blood. It seemed that he had done a trivial thing. Han Fei didn't waste any time but directly unscrewed the small bottle containing the god of war's bloodline. As soon as the bottle was opened, a surge of blood chi rose into the sky. The terrifying protective energy on the surface of the cloud whale collapsed the moment the bottle was opened. The old turtle said, This is the suppression of the origin. It doesn't matter. Get a little god of war's essence blood and then quickly close it. The old turtle thought to himself, If this is really the bloodline of a god, then Han Fei probably won't be able to resist it. If Han Fei can't resist it, the old turtle will absorb it for him. It shouldn't be a problem. He had to be careful of this little calabash and not compete with him. Han Fei was also very careful. After all, this was the essence blood of a god. He had to be careful. He took out a small drop the size of a fingernail and dripped it into his collapsed bloodline. At this moment, his law enforcer ability was broken and swallowed by the bloodline. His flesh and blood showed the color of the power of law enforcer and also flickered with golden light, but it was not the same thing as a golden body. At this moment, these powers were flowing into his flesh and blood and had been gradually fusing. When this god blood dripped in suddenly, the golden light shone brightly, and the collapsing flesh and blood immediately showed signs of stabilizing, and in an instant it was stabilized. Apocalyptic divine technique. This time, Han Fei's flesh and blood finally wrapped around his muscles and bones, no longer collapsing. He didn't know whether it was because of the law enforcer ability or the essence blood of the god of war. In short, Han Fei's body became more stable, and his flesh and blood became more solid. Han Fei didn't feel any pain in his flesh and blood. He just felt that everything was reasonable. His flesh and blood recovered, and his skin grew again. As if fearing that his flesh and blood were not strong enough, Han Fei took out another small drop of the essence blood of the god of war and dripped it into his healing flesh and blood. This time, Han Fei only felt that his strength had increased greatly. His body was even stronger, and energy was surging in his flesh and blood. Fortunately, the protective energy of the cloud whale was broken by the blood of the god of war. Otherwise, a large amount of energy would have rushed into Han Fei's body. Han Fei's body was still slightly fatter, which made him realize that he seemed to have eaten too much. Han Fei activated the void fishing technique and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't use more. Otherwise, if he used another drop, he might explode. At this time, Han Fei clearly felt a slight sigh, and then he heard the old turtle say, "You scared me. I thought this was really the essence blood of a god. It turns out to be emperor blood." Han Fei was dumbfounded. Emperor blood? The old turtle vowed solemnly. "Of course, do you think you can swallow the blood of gods now? Since you can swallow it, this is at most emperor blood. And it may be diluted emperor blood. Otherwise, that small drop just now would have been enough for you. It seems that the so-called god of war your teacher mentioned is just a venerable emperor." Han Fei didn't have any special feelings about gods, so he said, "What's wrong with a venerable emperor? A venerable emperor is also an immortal level expert. That's still much stronger than you, okay?" Chapter 1388. The god of war was not a god. Just now, Han Fei thought that it was an orthodox god who might be able to give him an oracle or something. It turned out that the god of war was an eternal emperor. But even so, Han Fei could only use 2 small drops of the essence blood of the god of war with his phenomenal success golden body. When the emperor blood entered his body, Han Fei clearly felt that his flesh and blood were stabilized. However, Han Fei had a new discovery. This so-called emperor blood seemed to be competing with the original golden blood in his body. Han Fei thought to himself, no matter how powerful other people's blood is, it's still other people's blood. You can be used by me and become a part of my energy. But you want to swallow my original blood and replace it? That's a joke. Swallow it. Han Fei activated his Dao seed, and his blood was surging. The golden blood crazily tore the scarce but extremely high-quality essence blood of the god of war like bugs. At this moment, the demonic energy in Han Fei's body was surging. Almost every 10 minutes, 2 or 3 ultra-quality demonic stones would shatter. Fortunately, Han Fei had obtained so many ultra-quality demonic stones at once. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to last long with his original reserves. An hour later, Han Fei felt that the essence blood of the god of war hadn't been refined yet, but the power of his phantom glass wings had been completely swallowed and melted into his flesh and soul. Another 6 hours later, his law enforcer ability was completely devoured. Han Fei's skin grew back, becoming quite fair, and he looked much more handsome. His flesh and blood were completely stabilized. Less than half of the new essence blood of the god of war had been refined. After another 12 hours, the essence blood of the god of war was finally absorbed. At this time, Han Fei's body was extremely short of energy. When he swallowed the energy around him again, Han Fei found that the cloud whale's protective energy was already insufficient. His body seemed to be a bit too strong, which was the benefit of swallowing the blood of the god of war. In an instant, Han Fei realized that sometimes it wasn't a good thing to be too strong. If he didn't have the energy supply now, he might be swallowed by it. Apart from anything else, just from his body size. In the short span of half a day, he had become fat because he had absorbed too much energy. His whole body had almost turned into a ball. Then, due to the lack of energy from the outside world, he became thin and shriveled again, turning into a bag of bones. Han Fei felt that the trend would be irreversible in another quarter of an hour. With a thought from Han Fei, a dozen energy fruits floated in front of him. Phew, in the outside world, Han Fei had disappeared for 3 days. From the first day he returned to the Scattered Stars Island, when he killed a peak-level Tao-seeking cultivator with his fist, and swept 100 kilometers of the sea with his sword. The whole island had been seething. Many people speculated that Han Fei had a great opportunity and became a peerless expert. However, Han Fei only appeared for a moment and then disappeared. He did not appear in any of the celebration banquet. Those who knew the inside story even looked at the Empyrean waterfall where Jiuyin Ling was. At this moment, Jiuyin Ling was still in her old courtyard. Next to her yard, Han Fei's yard was still there, but it was surrounded by fog and seemed to be isolated by an array. In Jiuyin Ling's courtyard, 2 girls were drinking tea. Jiuyin Ling was still elegant, but she was less otherworldly. The woman opposite her seemed absent-minded. She had a pair of hanging braids on her temples, and there were 2 curly bangs in front of the braids, presenting a beautiful arc. At this moment, the woman was holding the teacup in her hand, and her eyes were a little dull. Jiuyin Ling couldn't help but say, "Xiaoyu, you don't seem to like eating much recently. Are you too lazy to cook?" Hearing Jiuyin Ling's words, Xiaoyu couldn't help but come back to herself. "Huh? I just feel that ordinary ingredients are already useless. No matter how delicious the dishes are, they can't be tasted. My spiritual heritage and talent are not as good as yours. If I don't pay attention to my cultivation, how can I become an expert in the future?" Jiuyin Ling smiled and said, "Xiaoyu, you're already very good. Even with a level 6 or level 7 spiritual heritage, I dare not say that I can surpass you in cultivation speed. You're just short of time." Xiaoyu shook her head slightly. "No, I know what I'm capable of. Even with a great opportunity, my spiritual heritage was only upgraded by 1 level in a life-and-death situation. Compared to most of you, I'm still far behind." Jiuyin Ling raised her head, looked at the place surrounded by clouds not far away, and said lightly, "If he were here, he would definitely say that this is all nonsense. Spiritual heritage can only determine a person's aptitude, but hard work can also be a kind of talent." Xiaoyu curled her lips and asked curiously, "Xiaojiu, did he really kill a venerable?" "Yes." Xiaoyu couldn't help but support her chin. "A venerable? A legendary super expert. I've been on the Scattered Stars Island for so long, but I've only seen a few of them. Even if I saw one occasionally, I only caught a glimpse of a figure from afar. What does it look like? I couldn't even see it clearly. I'm afraid that people of this realm only appear in stories in our village, right?" Jiuyin Ling was actually not much better than Xiaoyu. Although she was born in the Thousand-Star City and had seen venerable powerhouses, fighting a venerable? That was still unimaginable for her. In the past, everyone said that Jiuyin Ling's cultivation speed was unparalleled. But now, Han Fei could kill a venerable in the blink of an eye. What kind of cultivation speed was this? Xiaoyu suddenly said, "Let's not talk about him. Xiaojiu, when are you going to transcend the tribulation? You're already so strong now. You can definitely transcend the tribulation, right?" Jiuyin Ling still shook her head. "At this point, I finally know that transcending the tribulation is not so easy. I'm not a body cultivator, so I can only resist it with the power of laws and the Tao of 9 sounds. In fact, when these are all at the extreme, peak-level law enforcers can still become stronger, but they have to use enough energy to polish their bodies. However, with my physique, I need to be at least twice as strong to have the ability to transcend the tribulation." Xiaoyu couldn't help but stick out her tongue. "That's too difficult." However, Xiaoyu's heart did a flip. Her physique was considered extremely strong among those in the same realm. After practicing the 108 spirit-absorbing war bodies, few people in the entire Scattered Stars Island could surpass her in terms of physique. Xiaoyu felt that she had already mastered this great technique that Han Fei gave her. Over the years, although she had exchanged for several other types of body tempering techniques, she felt that they were much worse than the 108 spirit-absorbing war bodies. Xiaoyu thought that at least Jiuyin Ling didn't know this body tempering technique. Now, even if she wanted to learn it, the effect wouldn't be as good as before, although it wasn't useless. That was the foundation laid in the early stage. It was quite difficult to change it now. Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, above the Empyrean waterfall, a conch sounded. A law enforcer controlled a boat to come and shouted, "All members of the Empyrean waterfall are marching to the Sea of Pearls. The army of sea demons is coming. Reinforce them quickly." Hum, 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 auras burst out, and in the blink of an eye, 100 people gathered on the boat. "Big Yellow, come back!" Granny Een shouted, and a yellow figure flew to the sky and the ground. In an instant it passed above Jiuyin Ling's house. Seeing this, Xiaoyu immediately said, "Xiaojiu, I have to return to the team. Be careful." Jiuyin Ling also said solemnly, "Okay." It couldn't be simple that the entire Empyrean waterfall was mobilized. Although there were many experts on the Scattered Stars Island, including many peak-level hidden fishers and law enforcers, those who could live in the Empyrean waterfall were all extraordinary. Even though Jiuyin Ling said that her physique was not strong enough, when she really entered the battlefield, few people could resist her when she used the seal. Xiaoyu returned to the team, only to see fishing boats and teams all over the sky. Tens of thousands of hanging fishers and 7 or 8 teams of 100 hidden fishers flew past. Swish, swish, swish. The fishing boats flew away, leaving clouds of mist in the sky, exploding and leaving white marks all over the sky. Of course, Xiaoyu quickly caught up and returned to her team. At this moment, Jinger, who had been stuffing food on the Scattered Stars Island, was stunned. She had never seen such a scene before. In the past, she knew that Han Fei had fishing boats and heard that there were many fishing boats in the Yinyang Heaven. However, she never expected that everyone here had fishing boats, and everyone could fly in the sky and swim in the sea. Even the hanging fishers had their own fishing boats. Although the speed of the fishing boats was not fast, they were very rare. Squeak! Jinger held 7 or 8 skewers in her hand, and all kinds of snacks were in her hand. While looking at the grand scene in the sky, she sighed. The Yinyang Heaven is really at war. I've only just arrived, but I've already fought several battles. This time, it seems to be extraordinary again. But why hasn't Han Fei come out yet? Jinger naturally knew that Han Fei had gone to the Empyrean waterfall, and she also felt that there seemed to be something under the old turtle's body. However, this was the Yinyang Heaven's business, which was also Han Fei's business, so she could only watch. Quickly playing with the skewers in her hand, Jinger curled her lip. Although it's delicious, it's not as good as the ones I make myself. It seems that Han Fei was right. His cooking skills are indeed unparalleled. Gulp. With that, Jinger took out a row of cups of Liehua liquor out of nowhere, and the cups were still steaming with flames. He saw Jinger pouring one cup after another into her mouth. This is interesting. At the same time, in a certain club, a waiter cursed, "If there's a war, there's a war. Why are you stealing liquor? Fine, if you die outside, it'll be worth it." The Sea of Pearls. Hundreds of thousands of sea demons were coming. The Scattered Stars Island must have noticed it. When they were still more than 200,000 kilometers away, someone had already sensed them. At this moment, fishing boats were flying to the Scattered Stars Island from the Pearl Divers port. After all, most of the Pearl Divers were disabled. Although they could fight, the odds of them dying were high. Some of the bolder Pearl Divers made up their minds. We can't be disabled forever. Let's try our best. Another 3 days passed. Except for the clams in the sea, the entire Pearl Divers port was empty. It was foreseeable that the currency of the Thousand Star City would change, no matter what the result of this war was on this day. The sea was stormy and surging. The sky was no longer clear and the sea was dim. In the middle of the raging waves, more than 50,000 people had set up dozens of arrays around the Pearl Divers' port. Different from the Sea Demon's march, human beings had 5 major professions. Apart from professions, there were organizations such as the Guild of Fishers, the Pioneer Group, and the Dark Hunter Legion. At this moment they had already been set up. An explorer roared, "Where are they? Why haven't they come back?" An explorer responded, "No, the Sea Demon's attack this time is very resolute. The Scattered Stars Island is surrounded again. Countless sea creatures are surrounding the island." Shueishenqi stepped out of the void. "Don't panic, Elder Bingyun, there are many worms on the west coast of the Scattered Stars Island. Please guard there and prevent the enemy's venerable from taking advantage of us." The beautiful woman was nowhere to be seen. She said leisurely, "Okay." Shueishenqi said again, "Elder Six Swords, the east of the Scattered Stars Island is on the line with the ancient battlefield. Please cooperate with Elder Jian Sanqing in case the enemy's venerable attack." "No problem." The sword light disappeared and Elder Six Swords had fled. Shueishenqi said again, "Master Chow, you have to guard the twisted jungle. But it's easy to defend and difficult to attack. I'm afraid that the enemy's venerable attacks. Please guard it." The venerable of the Chow family simply said, "Okay." On the other side, as soon as the venerable of the Chow family left, a venerable of the Yi family said, "Hey! They're all defending. Are we going to fight here?" Yang Kuan also said, "General Shui, isn't your arrangement a bit biased?" Sun Baixing also said, "Arranging the venerables of our big families to fight on the front line? It's indeed inappropriate." Shueishenqi's eyes turned cold. "We're facing a great enemy. I hope you can pay attention to your words. The venerables are only there to contain the enemy and rarely take action. Don't ruin our morale. Otherwise, I'll kill him even if I lose the Sea of Pearls."